time and space. The bad coffee at truck stops. But no, okay. Nash, what's going on?
Miraculous turnabout, sir.
There you go. See, prayer works.
Oh yeah, it was like an adjustment at a chiropractor, you know?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it just went clunk, and it's so beautiful. So thank you.
That's cool. Anytime, right? So anytime that you've got a story, a narrative playing over in your mind, remember that your goal is inner peace. None of those narratives can help you with anything,
Mm.
right? So it's like when you find that you've got this recurring story, just go straight into prayer. I mean, if it's irritating you, if you haven't really recognized the insanity of the story yet, I mean, you may have to sit there and let it bump you over the head a bit longer. But, sometimes they come around slowly and you don't really recognize it straight off, you know.
Mm.
But that's good. Very good. Very good. Yeah, we're all storytellers. So the human being and the conscious association is the association of the storyteller, and the story was written before you got here. Okay, so and where's Tina? I wanted to. Tina, are you online?
Yes.
Oh, she's there. All right. So I wanted to talk to you about this too, and I want to use the idea. Right, so there's no accurate way. I mean, unless you're like Edgar Casey and you can go into the Akashic records, and even then he wasn't too bad, but he was occasionally a bit hit and miss. But if you look at the idea of a soul contract, right? So in the Course, Jesus says, you wrote the story, you wrote the script before you came. You made the decision to come here, right, before coming to the world. And the world is actually the second part of the experience of separation. It's the corrective part. It's where you come not knowing why the hell you're here, right? But you come here with the opportunity or with the chance to work it all out um, whilst you're here. Now, if you think of the world or this dimension or this realm, whatever, as an incredibly unstable environment, right? Jesus talks about it in the Course as what is it? As something a very poor excuse for a home for the Son of God or something like that. But if you think about it as being an incredibly unstable environment, one of the other things he says in the Course is that man did not want peace, and the angels had to be withdrawn. Right, the angels had to be brought back. Right, because the angels became under attack by everyone else who was still suffering the rigors of their insanity without recognizing they're insane. Because when you try to pitch your perspective against somebody else's perspective and see yourself as I'm this side and I'm that side, that is the definition of insanity. That is the split mind. Okay, so and it's not that those things are good or bad or whatever. It's just like, oh, I see, I'm dealing with my insanity. I'm dealing with something that's causing me to experience not peace. Okay, and I'm trying to work it out with the same mind that is still trying to choose between the left and the right, or the better and the worse, or the right and the wrong, and I'm getting the results of that, right? Now, if you're using the same mind to try and do that, the same mind that doesn't know fundamentally the meaning of life, what kind of result can you expect except more of the same kind of mistakes and errors and things that are going to end up putting you right back in that same place again? And like any kind of story, every time it comes around, it's like Gilligan's Island. It's like, when are they ever going to get off the freaking island? Right? When is this story going to change? And you and you've got to look at it that way. So if you and Gilligan's Island's kind of funny because the one time they did get off, they went on a 3 hour cruise to celebrate getting off the island and had another storm and ended up back on the bloody island. But we're not going to do that this time. We're getting off and staying off, and we actually are already off, are already awake. But if you look at the idea of a soul contract, right? Now, I can't say that it's exactly this way. I really, to be honest, I don't know. But I do know that the script is written before you come. So, and I do know, partly because of the experience I had with the little golden orb. And if you guys haven't watched that video, you can watch that video in the experiences playlist. But I do know that there are chunks, there are sections, there are, uh, how would you even describe it? Weights or capacities or volumes or something that each of us has that we've chosen to take on board. Okay, now in the world, and this is as healers, right? You've come here as a healer. You've come here to help collapse the time of suffering across the board. You might think, on the other hand, that, well, I'm just somebody in the world and I've stumbled across a course in miracles and, I'm making my way through this whole thing. It's like, no, 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 no. I'm here to remind you that you actually agreed before coming here to play this part. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here having this Zoom meeting discussion, etc. Right? So, if you like, what was that movie, Tina, where he goes, "I've got nowhere else to go"? Officer and the Gentleman.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
Officer and the Gentleman. You guys in this meeting, you got nowhere else to go, right? This is boot camp. Right, this is like where Richard Greer's on his back doing 1,000 crunches to get into the commandos, and if he fails, they kick him out, and he goes back to his old life of shit and misery, right? And he's like, he can't do the 1,000 crunches or whatever, and he's like, come on, soldier, I'm going to kick you out, and he's like, no, I got nowhere else to go. So there's a point where you get to where, in your relationship with Jesus, right, or the atonement even, you realize you got nowhere else to go, right? And you have to kind of realize that point, because it makes no sense to go back to the world. It makes no sense to go back to that dualistic thinking where you try to work things out based on mine and yours, or better and worse, right? Because we've already done that and agreed together. That fucking gets me nothing, right? And now we're pioneers, right? Now we're looking at the idea, well, maybe I do have a soul contract. Maybe I did make an agreement with Jesus before coming here to take on board a certain aspect of time and space as a relationship and enter into that in a full commitment with the understanding that I'm there to heal it, right? I'm there to heal it. So I'm taking a chunk of denial. I'm writing it into my soul contract. Like, yeah, I can do that, right? Exactly the same as if you join the military or something. And Jesus says to think of yourself as a crusader, right? In the course, he says, think of yourself as a crusader, because this is a bloody crusade. Sometimes when you're looking at your shit and you're like, how am I going to get through this, right? Because the emotionality of it seems like a brick wall in your face. I can't do this. And of course, the ego's like, just kill yourself, just get out of here. You don't need to do this. You can just knock yourself off. And that always seems to be the backstop solution for the ego, which we've realized now is pointless. It's like, well, I've got another way, but I don't understand that way. I understand the way as I learn it, as I go through it. All right. So as I apply the lessons, as I apply the principles, then I understand it, not before, because all of this is taken on faith. Right. And faith simply states that I'll see it when I believe it. Right. Whereas the ego says, when I believe it, then when I see it, then I'll believe it. Right. So, but you've got to believe it first. Did I say that backwards the other one? But you guys know what I mean, right? So you'll see it when you believe it, right? You don't get to see it first and then believe it. So you've got an assignment. Let's look at it as an assignment. If you were to join the military, like your Richard Gere, and you would be assessed during that sort of boot camp period for where you best fit into the whole military organization, where you best fit in, whether you're going to be a radio operator, a technician, or a mechanic, or a frontline grunt, with a machine gun, or whether you're going to be a strategist. There's whole sorts of different things, and you take on a different department, right? So if you're drill sergeant or whoever says to you, right, you've got pretty good bloody sense of direction, we're going to put you in charge of navigation and all that sort of stuff. You'd be like, all right, I don't know nothing about navigation, but somebody trusts me that I know about navigation or that I'd make a good navigator. So that's what I'm going to take on because that's how I best serve the military. And the funny story, this is a true story as far as stories go. When I was 17, I was in the Navy Reserve Cadets, and my grandfather was in the Navy 50 years, and my father was in the Air Force and the military police and da da da. So I thought I'd follow in the family footsteps. And I went from doing a couple of years in the reserves to join the full-time Navy, right? And I went through all the tests. I passed all the tests, and I got to the shrink at the end. I got to the shrink, and I was 17, barely, probably close to 18, and he was the last one, right? I'd done the doctor, I'd done all the maths and everything. He was the last guy that you see. And he goes, why do you want to join the Navy? And I'm like, I didn't have an answer, like other than my dad was in the Navy, my grandfather. And he goes, that's not a good excuse. He says, he said, why do you want to join? Not because of your parents, it's not, they're not directing you here. And we went through all these questions. And at the end, he said, I'm not going to recommend you for service in the Navy. And I couldn't work it out. I'm like, what? And he goes, you'd be better off to serve your country as a priest or something like that. Right now, and I didn't join the Navy. I don't know how that guy, way back when I was 17, saw that in me. Because at 17, I was really an angry young man or coming into my angry young man period. And I wanted to join the Navy. I would have had no qualms about firing a gun at somebody if I had to and all that sort of thing in defense of country and family and all of that. So how the hell did he see that in me? But I just trust that if that's what he said, then that's the part I play. And I asked him, I said, well, is there any jobs in the Navy for chaplains or anything like that? If you think that's what I'd be good at, I just wanted to serve, right? And there wasn't, at the time, there wasn't, because religion's in a great decline. And so I went off and had a whole series of meaningless kind of blue collar jobs, like that really didn't fulfill me. But his words sort of stuck in the back of my mind, and eventually, like today, here I am, minister of God. It's like, how the hell did he see that in a 17-year-old kid all those years ago? So, but I trust when Jesus says that the story was written beforehand, that everything that comes to me is meant to come to me, that I'm capable of dealing with it. Right now, one of the things I know in the course is you have these relationships, you get presented with them, and they have their own particular emotional package. They bring up a lot of shit, right? But you never get more than you can deal with. Your ego is going to always try to convince you that you don't have to deal with it, that you can run away or do whatever, because your ego's only purpose is for its longevity. And obviously, the idea of healing is the relinquishment of the ego. It doesn't want that. Okay. So it's going to look for excuses. But in the idea of the soul contract, if we look at it that way, you've taken on board a particular package. Trucks. You've taken on board a particular package of energy, of a frequency of denial that, as a soldier in God's army, let's say, or as a crusader in Jesus's disciplinary mind training movement, I don't know what to call it, you're capable of dealing with, right? But because your mind is experiencing denial, because you find yourself in denial, you're always in denial of your own power. You're always in denial of your own certainty that you can deal with it, right? Which is why you're entitled to miracles. But I'm telling you, you can deal with it. But you're going to need the miracle, because the miracle is what it is that shows you that you're not separate from God, which is the true power of your mind, right? We seem to be alone. We seem to be by ourselves in a world that makes no sense, and everyone can say whatever they want and do whatever they want. And I seem to be in the middle of it somewhere, getting bounced around like a bloody, whatever, something getting bounced around. And what I'm looking for fundamentally is some stability, is some peace, is my true sense of self. And I want to be able to count on that sense of self and depend on that sense of self, even when the shit hits the fan. Right? But it's one step at a time. You start with the first thing that shows up and you realize, all right, I've chosen this. This is part of my soul contract. This is part of my package in the military of Jesus, in the crusade of Jesus. And I can deal with it because otherwise it wouldn't be in front of me. Right? And you have to kind of square yourself up with that. Otherwise, your mind goes into this sort of spiral of panic and what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it's like, and you'll completely forget in all the worrying that you're entitled to miracles. Right now, in the Bible, even Jesus says, there's no point in worrying because you can't change one hair on your head from white to black. You can't even change the color of one hair on your head by worrying. So what is the point of it, right? It gets you nothing, right? So I'm learning that I'm entitled to miracles. I'm learning that I'm supported by a higher power, but I only learn as I put it into application because the concepts are nothing. Right? Without the application, the concepts are nothing. Salvation is freedom from concepts. Right? What's the point of having salvation offered to you if you're constantly having to navigate a whole bunch of concepts to justify your position in time and space? To sort of tell yourself that you're entitled to miracles. What, till the end of time you're going to tell yourself that? Eventually you want to get to the point where you don't need the course, you don't need the miracles, you don't need anything, you're free, right? Because Jesus is telling you, you're free now. You are already free. The only thing that prevents you from recognizing that and from living in the happiness and the peace of that is all the narratives of the stories that goes on in your mind that constantly show up outside of yourself. Right? Now, if you look at the idea of forgiveness, some of the things that occur during the day, just little tiny things, you can go, whatever, doesn't really bother me, and you can just let it go. But some things have a bigger emotional weight to them. Some things are like, the death of a loved one, or um, the breakup of a relationship, or losing all your money on the dogs or whatever, and it sends you into a kind of a spiral. How am I going to deal with this? Because it seems in your own mind you can't just go whatever and let it go and move on, because the mind has attachments. It has attachments and obligations to time and space, and those are the things you're always looking at, not the story. The story is just the bit that you present yourself to make it reasonable why you feel a certain way. The actual story is, oh, I'm here doing a job with Jesus. I'm here doing a job with the atonement. I'm here actually looking at something that benefits the whole rather than my own little tiny narrative that I'm telling myself it is. You guys hear that? It's like you're here to serve the greater good, right? The way that you do that is through, technically, through your own little bit, your own little piece of participation in your relationships and the actions of forgiveness that you're able to apply. But when you realize that those things come under the atonement principle, which is you will receive as you give, you recognize automatically that there's a divine element to your forgiveness. It's not just about forgiving things in the world, it's actually divine. There's a higher purpose to what's going on here. And if you don't see the bigger picture in it, you're just going to get frustrated because it will seem like there's never any kind of an end to forgiveness. Right? It's like, where's Nash? When I said to Nash last week, I said, go away and pray now. Use that energy that you've got that's all tied up in the story for prayer. Don't tell me the story. I already know the story. Man comes to the world, man gets old, man dies. That's the story. And all the nitty gritty in between it, that this thing happened and that thing happened, they're really of no account. Right? Those are just opportunities like presented to you that you look at to do the actual work. But the story is always the same story. It's the story of the prodigal son. I seem to be walking away from the light, don't know what God is, where the hell I am, what's going on here in this world. I don't know the meaning of life. Then all of a sudden, boom, you find salvation or something that seems to represent an alternative to the yin yang pain and suffering of the world. And you start to turn around, you repent, you turn around and you start to make your way back into the light. Right? You become more godly rather than less godly. Right? But you have to really look at it on board from the perspective as, I chose to do this, right? Now, and Tina, in your specific situation, when we were talking about you see me as sort of leaning a bit to the right in politics or whatever, and you see yourself leaning a bit to the left, it's like that cannot not be how you see things. Okay, because the ego always speaks first. And even though I know for a fact I don't care less about the left or the right, and in some regards I probably see myself, if at one time I would have seen myself more aligned with the left, right, being a protester and a greenie and trying to save the forests and all of that sort of stuff. But I realised that didn't work, and but I don't have any kind of alignment at all. But a mind that still has a leaning to one side of anything, right? So you're not just here to give up the stuff you don't like. You're here to give up the good and the bad. When Jesus says, "Give up the world and follow me," he doesn't say just give up the bits you don't like. It's like give it up in its entirety, because until you give up the meaning that you've given the world in its entirety, God's meaning or the true meaning of the world can't be revealed to you, right? Because there's still something in the way. You're still holding on to a preference. It's like God's meaning is ubiquitous. It's all encompassing, right? The space in your mind that it's going to occupy when it dawns on you, when revelation dawns on you, is going to take up all of your memory banks. It's going to take up all of your consciousness. Not all of it, except for that little bit that you like about that time, in band camp or whatever, like it's going to take up the whole thing, right? So it's like I have to give up the meaning I've given the world, not the physical world. You can't give it up. How can you? What are you going to do? Put on some springs on your feet and just keep jumping higher until you're out of here? It's like, it's impossible, right? But you can give up the meaning you've given it, right? Now that's going to leave you in a void for a minute. That's going to leave you in this place where all of a sudden I've got no meaning. My whole life, my whole experience, I've been clinging to meaning. I give the left a meaning or the right a meaning, and I say that this is a better meaning than that meaning, right? But none of my thoughts mean anything because none of them can tell me the meaning of life, right? And rather than sit back and realize that none of my thoughts can actually tell me the meaning of life, I perpetuate giving things meaning as if that's somehow going to get me out of the drama of not knowing where the hell I am and what's going on, right? And it won't. So when I present to you something, you're going to hear it from the unhealed perspective of wherever it is you're at with that package in your mind, right? You're not going to hear it clearly. It's going to literally take a miracle. All I can do in a certain sense is point in the right direction, is like point here, point here, point here, point that way. It's like the old man used to say, I'm just a billboard on the King's Highway. All I am is a sign that points up. Use your father, call on your father, pray, like that's the constancy of my declaration and everything. But because ego always speaks first, when I say something and it's different to what your narrative is or your script is, your ego is going to jump in and go, oh, you must be meaning this, right? Now, rather than realize you don't know what I'm meaning, you attempt to give it a meaning, and then you find yourself playing ping pong back between Dave's a bit on the right and I'm a bit on the left and whatever. And that's fine, but you're starting to realize that now. Does that make sense? And it's the same for everybody. Everybody in their own association is going to have preferences. And when I tell you something, you're going to think that because I'm not talking about the preferences that you particularly like or align with, you're going to just naturally assume, because ego speaks first, that I must be talking about those other preferences, because in your mind, you don't have anything going on other than that yin and yang. That's all you've got to choose between. Does that make sense? Now, there comes the point where you recognize, all right, I don't know. I can see this thing. And Tina, I had the same exact thing, right, with all of my transitions in relationships, actually, with all of the healings that I went through, where you can grasp at it. It's like it's in the air in front of you. It's orbiting. You can't quite put your finger on it, right? And I realized I had to stop trying to grasp at it. I had to let my ignorance and my unknowing of what Ted was saying, because there was many times when I was sitting with him and he would say stuff, and some of the guys that knew what he was saying, they'd be laughing with him, whatever, and I'd be looking around the room and like thinking, what the hell's he talking about? I knew he was talking about something for my good, right? Because the voice from the sky had sent me there. Wouldn't send me there if it was not for my good. It's kind of crazy. But I could sort of hear it. I could sort of hear it. I could hear that he was talking about something I didn't understand, but it took me a while to recognize that if I tried to fill in my lack of understanding with another kind of narrative that I thought he was talking about, I was just going to take myself on the garden path all the way around again until I realized I don't know. It's like Annie's teaching. I don't know. I don't know what the hell's going on. Right? And there comes a point like with Nash where that story, and you just stop telling the story. Right? I'm not unsafe anywhere in the world. I'm not a left-leaning or a right-leaning person. I'm none of those things. I'm a child of God, and I've chosen to take on board a package of energy and convert it as part of my agreement, let's say, or as part of my journey of the soul. And this is what it looks like at the moment. So rather than try to give something I don't understand a meaning to make it understandable, right? I'm going to be still, and I'm going to admit to myself, I don't know what this is. I don't know why I get triggered by this thing. I don't know why this upsets me, or somebody says something and it sends me off in a flurry in another direction, right? That's perfectly okay not to know. And in fact, it's important, right? Because it leaves the space for the Holy Spirit to come in and actually give you true direction, true understanding, right? And for that, you must pray. And like you said, maybe I need to fast and pray. Don't worry about the fasting, just pray. Right? Keep your mind open to the miracle. And, it's like many times I've been like, Jesus, I don't know what this is. I don't know what's being presented to me. It upsets me, you know. And and I was telling you, Tina, that story about heaven, the woman that kept, she had this kind of, what do you call that when somebody has a crush on you, and it's not like stalking, it's more obvious than stalking. But anyway, she wouldn't leave me alone, and it went on for years. It went on for like nearly 3 years, and I wasn't interested, but it was bringing stuff up in me. It was bringing stuff up every time I would see her. I would feel a certain way. It would be like, "Argh!" And I would try to tell myself, um, oh, she's just crazy, don't worry about her, just ignore her. But it became harder and harder to ignore her. And every time I had to ignore her, um, it sort of compounded with all my past memories of trying to ignore her. And it just became more frustrating. When is this going to end? I don't want this person in my life. I don't want this person giving me unwanted attention. But on the flip side, it was bringing stuff up and I couldn't deny it. I was in a spiritual healing center where everybody had stuff coming up, right? And was learning how to use their triggers for healing rather than react to them. And I started opening the book, and I always seemed to open the book at the fear of redemption. I had the old blue book then, and no matter what time, no matter how, when, why, or what I opened the book, it was always at the fear of redemption. And the first line in the fear of redemption was, you may wonder why it's necessary to look upon your anger and realize its full extent. And I kept reading that. And so every time I would see her, and every time she would leave me some ridiculous kind of gift or something, or try to kiss me or whatever, um, my anger would come up. I could now identify it, right? It was like, oh, damn, I'm angry. And then I had to admit to myself, I am angry. I wasn't angry at her, right? My true anger is directed at God, right? Because if God is everything and I'm in one relationship, I'm one with all things, there is no heaven. There is no crazy woman giving me unwanted attention. There is just a symbolic representation of a relationship that I have with the universe, with the whole, and I'm angry about it. Right? Now, Jesus says in the Course, you're trying to usurp the throne of God. You want to be creator rather than that which is created as the Son of God. And I don't remember making that decision. I don't remember the tiny mad idea. I don't remember any of it. I just have to take it on spec and trust Jesus that if he says that's what he's saying, It's like the fall from grace. There was a war in heaven and I chose the wrong side. It's like, oh shit, right? But God's love is unconditional. I'm not being blamed for choosing the wrong side. I'm not being judged. I'm not being any of that stuff. But I got to tidy up my shit. It's like I want back in. I want back in the kingdom. I want to awaken in eternity and remember that I'm one with all things and not have this crazy world outside of myself seeming to represent to me the left and the right or the yin and the yang. I'm done with that. I want something else. So when you take on the big picture, when you look at the big picture, and like some people now, even in a worldly sense, talk about what's going on in the world. It's a spiritual war. It's not a war between governments. It's not a war between economies. It's a spiritual war. It's the light versus the dark. Well, in a sense, yes, but that's within me. You know, I'm at war with myself, and if I'm honest, I find that. If I'm honest, I'm angry at myself. I make stupid decisions. I say the wrong thing. If I, Jesus, in the course, he says, if you could follow back any one particular line of thinking that doesn't bring you happiness back to its origin point, even in the world, you would realize that it's just one bad decision after another, after another, after another, because I'm making my decisions without God. I'm making my decisions based on what I think my best interests are and not stopping to ask the Holy Spirit, what would you have me do in this situation? Because my ego's loud and proud and it wants stuff. I'm entitled to this, and I should be able to have a relationship with that person, or I should be able to have all these things that I want in the world. Why not everybody else does? And we give ourselves excuses and we make our own decisions, completely oblivious to the fact that I've actually got a soul journey already. And if I check in with home base, I'll be given corrective navigations to stay on track with that journey. And that journey will be peaceful, it will be easy, it will flow. But whilst I'm still trying to navigate my journey based on what I think I see outside myself as the left and the right, and try to justify my position in time and space based on those indicators, rather than realizing those indicators are opportunities, then I'm going to stay stuck in that off-track world. I'm going to stay stuck in the false world, in the world of illusions and bad decisions, in the war against myself. So it cannot not be that you are going to see outside of yourself what you have already projected. Right? It's like Jesus says, even a prophet's not welcome in their own home. You know, you're not gonna appreciate, if you've got an agenda, like the Pharisees or the Sadducees or the Sanhedrin or whatever. All of those guys had an agenda to their own religious orientation. Jesus comes along 2,000 years ago and says, well, I'm the fulfillment of all the prophecy, and now you have to listen to me. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? We've already got an agenda, and this is what we've decided it's about. Get rid of this guy. Let's just nail him to a cross and be done with it, and then we can carry on with our agenda and wait for the Messiah to come. Because Jesus to them was just a carpenter, the son of a carpenter. Who are you? You're just a carpenter's son. And it's blasphemy, blasphemy that you declare yourself the son of God, the fulfillment of the prophecy. But he was the fulfillment of the prophecy. And in your own narrative, in your own life experience, you also are the fulfillment of that prophecy. You are the one that brings healing to your world. Right? Who else is it going to be? Right? But you've got to see the world for what it is. You've got to see what's actually going on, not what you think or prefer is going on. Right? So every time your mind, and this is where you keep your finger on your nose or your foot in your mouth, but every time something seems to throw you into a tizzy, right, throw you into a spin, stop, immediately stop and realize I've got a story. All right, this is an opportunity for healing, right? because there is only one story here, and I'm either experiencing the peace of God or I'm not. That's the story. I'm either in the flow, going with my own soul contract, perfectly fulfilling and living my life in Christ, or I'm not. Right now, the way that comes about to a complete sense of there's this kind of period, right? There's this period we call healing where you go through all the particulars of going from the old yin yang dualistic way of seeing the world as left and right, mine and yours, and I like this and you like that, um, which is separation, to realizing the triggers that are contained in all of that, which are triggers for healing, not triggers for reaction. Okay? They're triggers that indicate a need for healing. And that should become apparent because you set the goal as inner peace. The goal of my life is inner peace. That's what I've chosen. That's what Jesus is offering me. The goal of the course is inner peace. Now, inner peace is not peaceful sometimes, it's all the time. I either want what Jesus is holding out to me all the time or not at all. I don't get it on my own terms. Right? Now, he's saying when you give up the world, you'll have peace. I'm telling you, when you give up the world, you'll have peace because the world only exists as a bunch of ideas in your mind that are verified through memory or anticipation again and again and again. And you look out with your body's eyes and you decide what it is you see and you give it a meaning straight away, right? And because the mind is untrained, undisciplined, or partly trained and partly disciplined, wherever you're at in your own process, you get the results of your own thinking that reflects the nature of your relationship with where you're at in it. Right? I'm in a process of healing my relationship within myself, which is symbolic of my relationship with my father. In eternity, my relationship with my father is one of unconditional love. Unconditional. There's no ifs or buts about it. God loves me without any judgment, and I love God without any judgment. Right? And that's the nature of my true functioning mind, my higher functioning mind. It's at perfect peace, and it has this whole capacity or whole resonance with unconditional love. But in the world, love seems to be conditional. Acceptance of our brothers seems to be conditional. Right? So my ideology versus your ideology. You have to realize that the place is the world where the world is the place where all things come to die. It doesn't matter what ideology you have. Go and tell your ideology to the tombstones. They don't care. The trees, the birds, the bees, nobody cares. It's this mad game that we're taught, we're educated with when we come here, and our soul journey is to break free from that. Our soul journey is to uncondition ourselves, unlearn what we've learned, and remember the truth of our being. I'm a divine fucking Christ child, and so are you. And you got to live from that. You got to represent only that. And when the narratives of the world try to creep their way back in and tell you something that is world related or temporal related, get behind me, Satan. Not interested in that. I'm not interested in that shit. I don't know what the next thing that is in front of me is, but I'm not interested in that. I've made a decision, right? I'm just going to live in the here and the now in the peace of God. And whatever comes to me that tempts me to believe other than that actually exists, that somebody else is something other than a child of God, that this person represents this or that person represents that, that's a lot of horse shit. I don't want it. I've played that game for too long. I've seen that it goes nowhere. I'm choosing something else now. I'm choosing for the miracle. I'm choosing for the correction without trying to decide what I want that to look like. Right? I don't care what has to happen, Lord. I just want peace. I don't care what part I have to play. I just want peace. Use me however you will, as long as I have peace and am able to maintain peace and represent peace. That's it. That's all I want, because that's what Jesus is telling me the goal of the course is. Right? I'm learning to be miracle minded so that I can come to a place where I become revelation ready. And it's the revelation I want, where my mind stops vacillating between yin and yang, between the two dualities of the opposites of everything that the world represents, because everything in the world has its opposite. Everything. And I'm done with playing the game of opposites. My thing's better than your thing. Because that's separation. That separates me from my brother. That separates me from everyone and everything, is my own opinions about something, failing to realize I don't know the meaning of life. Right? I don't know the meaning of life, but yet let me charge around the world making weapons, destroying environments, and doing everything as if the meaning of life was something that, what the hell does it matter about the meaning of life? Who cares? And you still end up in the grave. You still end up just working, 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 paying taxes, 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 serving a system that continually gives you apparent justification to stay in a divided state of mind between these people and those people, to serve whatever purpose, arbitrary as it is, it would have you serve, and keep you completely enamored by all the shiny things of the world rather than remembering your creative reality. The kingdom of heaven is within you. That's what you're doing here. That's what this is about. That's what the soul contract is for. I'm not here going through all these relationships, my financial relationship, my spiritual relationship, my marital relationship, my everything, whatever relationship, everything in the world is some form of a relationship. Body in relationship to something. Right? I'm not doing all that for no reason. If you think there's no point to it, you're going to have preferences. Well, I think I like these kind of relationships, and I don't like those. I seem to get more out of these. Right? Jesus says in the course, the ego's only guiding light really is its own comfort and its own safety and its own protection, and it uses you as its puppet to navigate through a world, keeping you on track just gently, gently through the chaos of separation, so that you don't get wise to the fact that it's not actually benefiting you at all. You're a slave, Neo. Right? I love that scene in The Matrix where Morpheus suddenly holds up the battery and he goes, "This is you, dude. You keep the system charged by your allegiance to it," which is why mind training is so important. You have to train your mind that none of the left or the right is anything you want. My brother is not a body. These people getting treated this way or those people treating other people that way, that's the trap. That's the story. I got hooked in that trap in the 80s with Africa, with the Great Famine, the biggest famine the world had ever seen at the time. 11,000 children and women dying every single day on our TVs. And there's me, no food, no water. And there's me with a whole big plate of food every night in the family home, needing nothing. And I couldn't stand it. The stark contrast of the haves and the have-nots, the betters and the worse, and all of that, it just smacked me in the face. I couldn't eat my food. I didn't feel like eating my food. I wanted to wrap it up and send it to Africa somehow, which I knew was not practical. But, you know, the dichotomy of the world, of the yin yang world that I was taught and educated in, which began, like, I love the little analogy of Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other, right? We're taught that from when we're a child. We're taught to separate. We're taught to judge, rather than taught the truth of ourselves, which is that we are all one and that love is our common denominator. Unconditional love. I'm here to be my brother's keeper. I don't care who that brother is. I don't care if they gravitate to the left or to the right. It doesn't matter. That is my brother in Christ having their worldly experience, and I can join with them and help to bring them into my world rather than leave them to languish or join them in their world. There is another alternative. There is a better way. But those of us who have stumbled onto the course or come to the crossroads where the course becomes our guidance for a moment, we need to represent that. We need to teach that again and again and again in order to learn it. And the particular things like Tina, I can tell you that that saying. I think it's Tupac. God gives his greatest challenges to his strongest soldiers. I know what you're looking at. I know the particulars of your left-right orientation, and it's a huge package. It's massive, but it's not bigger than the miracle. It's not bigger than the miracle. Other people are going to have other packages that are represented. It'll be the same energy, but it'll be represented through other things that are more tangible. I mean, if we were in the army, Tina, you'd be in the front line with a machine gun, and the rest of us are backing you up because we know you can do what you can do. We're all Jesus's crusaders, the great crusade. But the motto of the crusade: listen, learn, and do. Right? Listen, learn, and do. But you're not going to listen, right? I'm not going to listen. No one's going to listen until you're tired of listening to that other voice that tells you what it thinks is going on. Right? And you have to hear it again and again and again. And I will say it until the last day on earth. I will represent this until the last day on earth. Jesus taught up until his last breath, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. He was still teaching even on the cross, even to the bandits. This day you will be with me in heaven. Not once did he go, fuck you all, fucking fuck off. He never said, not once. He was always blessing, always representing the truth. Even when the blood was pouring from the hands, the feet, around his head, all the whip marks and everything. Still he was blessing because his mind knew the truth of the situation he was in, not the situation that his ego would have wanted to tempt him to think, he was justified in being a victim or something else was going on other than God's will. When I look at the world and I look at the many, many leaders of countries, let's say even, it's like, I don't agree with any of them. They're all just there choosing from their own particular passage of left or right or this ideology, that ideology. And it's like, that none of it's going to work. Check your history books, right? Even the greatest empires fall. The Roman Empire, one of the most successful and biggest empires the world has ever known, collapsed, right? History is a great testament to the futility of a split-minded system, a split-minded narrative. But that's what we are taught. And that's why the first half of the workbook, the first 180 whatever lessons in that workbook, they are specifically dedicated to undoing the way I see things now. My thoughts don't mean anything. Nothing I see means anything, right? First lesson, number one, nothing I see means anything. Now, if nothing I see means anything, what am I doing? If Jesus, the head of the atonement, the guy that rose from the dead, that never died, he would say, right? If he is telling me that nothing I see means anything, surely I can recognize there that, well, I'm at odds with you there, Jesus, because I think it means something because I'm still reacting to it, right? Why would you react to the figures in a dream if you truly knew you were dreaming? Why would you react to an illusion, to a lie, if you knew it was a lie? You would just ignore it. It wouldn't even splatter on your windscreen. Right? But it's because you don't know that it's a lie. It's because you don't know that it's an illusion, the matrix, the Maya. You may understand that as a concept, but to know it as your actual holy shit, I've been outside, I've looked back, there was nothing there. To know it as your experience, that's a whole nother thing. But to get to that, the mind has to be made ready for that experience, revelation ready. So that's good. Any questions there, anyone?
Yeah, Dave, I have a question.
Who's that? Hang on, I got to scroll here a second.
This is Max.
Hey, brother, what's going on?
I wanted to ask you about this experience that is outside time and space, union with God.
Right,
Um, there's something in me that knows that is true
right,
and that it's a part of my path. It's a part of my process. And at the same time, I know that I can't force it. Anytime I'm trying to make it happen, it's just futile, useless.
right.
Um, so my question is, how do I balance knowing and wanting this to happen and also realizing that it's up to God's timing, I suppose?
Well, you kind of just answered your own question, but
Yeah, right. I guess. Uh,
but I'll break it down a bit more for you, okay? So,
okay.
like you said, you can't force it. You can't. It's impossible to force it, but you can meet the conditions whereby it occurs. Right? You can become, like I was just saying before, you can learn to become revelation ready. Okay. Now, the whole process, let's say, of becoming revelation ready focuses around one single action of mind. I mean, which you'll have to practice again and again and again until it becomes stable, until your mind becomes at peace, which is be still and know that I am God. Okay. Be still and know that I am God. The whole of the lessons in the workbook lead you to that place. The whole of the lessons in the workbook lead you to that point where through the meditative and the practical applications of the principles and all the miracles and everything else, you get to those sort of end lessons, which are just more like prayers, where Jesus says, and now we say God is, and we cease to speak. Okay. Now, if you look at the example of Jesus, and I don't want you to run out and do this because I know sometimes you do things, I say things and you do them. But Jesus went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights to be purified of the deceiver, right? To be challenged by Satan and go through that kind of rite of passage. He knew that was in him. He did his whole transformation in 40 days and 40 nights. He was tempted to the point where, without food and water, his body was on the verge of extinguishment or death or whatever. Like he wouldn't call it that, but to become unviable for use. But he pushed right through it. Now, in that push, and you'll find this with your relationships, which is why I always tell you guys, get into relationships, join a group or get involved in stuff, not for the involvement itself, but just so you can see what it brings up. Right. And if you're honest, your heart will gravitate. You'll be like, oh, I have an interest in this. I haven't, don't just dump it and become spiritually aloof about the world. I mean, you have to include the world in, but there's a threshold with everything. It's got to pop up. There's a threshold with everything that you will recognize. Okay. And the only way I can give this to you from my story, from my history, from my experience of my soul contract is when I was going through my deal with cancer and I chose not to have the chemotherapy. Right? I chose not to have orthodox medicine. I was going to deal with it in faith. I didn't have the Course in Miracles at that time. It came along during that time, but at the time I made that decision, all I had was the New Testament, right? The Sermon on the Mount, which I'd torn out of the Bible. Well, actually, I hadn't torn it out of the Bible. That was coming. But I knew that there was something else going on. I'd been taking leaps of faith. I'd been doing all these weird journeys without money and just trusting that the universe will support me, right? I've been doing all this stuff because I wanted to. I'd read about faith. I'd read the book of Job in the Old Testament. I'm like, right, I'm gonna make experiments with faith. But with every action of faith, there is a threshold where the temptation to turn back from that action of faith and seek an orthodox solution presents itself. Right? I remember walking down the front steps of the hospital, having told the doctor that I was going to heal my cancer with faith and not with his chemotherapy, and I was shit scared. I was walking down those stairs thinking, oh God, what have I done? You know, as if a real and viable solution, I just flipped it off.
Hmm.
And then I realized to myself, you know, it's like, no, I've seen faith works in other situations. It'll work in this one. Otherwise, I'll come to my extinguishment point and so be it. Right? I'll let the cancer claim me. And in a sense, I surrendered to it to do what it was going to do. And in my mind, what I was going to do was to try and keep the faith. Right? Now there was a threshold in that, and it presented itself quite a few times. People would come up to me who kind of knew I was going through stuff and offer me all sorts of homeopathic or whatever. And I did succumb to nettle oil, which was a homeopathic thing, to relieve the itching and the anxiety in my skin, because I could feel it under my skin. It was freaking awful. Right? It was like the worst thing, and I used to scratch my skin off, and that worked for a little while, and then it stopped working. And I kind of kicked myself in the bum for taking that nettle oil. It's like, no, that's not faith, you know. And I had to bring myself back to my faith again and again and again. And there were several moments of that. But ultimately, when the threshold came, where it was the moment, the midnight hour, you know, make or break. And I was watching the video the old man had made, and he was talking about heart disease. And he pointed out and he said, you there with that heart disease. I knew I didn't have heart disease, right? I had cancer. And he said, all you have to do is stand up and say, I have no use for this. And at that time, sitting there watching that video, it was going crazy. It would come and go, right? So the symptoms of it would come and go, and it would just itch and burn under my skin, or itch and like crawl under my skin. And without even thinking about it, I was at this kind of threshold emotionally with it. And I just stood up in the room. There was 30 people watching the video, and I stuck my arms out in front of me, which is where it was the worst. And I said, I have no use for this, out loud. And everybody looked up at me. And instantly, this heat went from my fingertips and just burned its way up my arms, into my body, up my neck, because it was my neck and my arms that was the most affected. And then gone, and I haven't had it since. But there was a threshold in that, right? My faith had a threshold. It went beyond the threshold. It was just beyond my doubt. It was where I had nothing left to lose, right? And I realized that I had no alternative. It was too late to go back for chemotherapy. There was no other way around it. And I was in for a penny, in for a pound. And it got to that point, that nexus point, right? That's where you get to in be still and know that I'm God. And you might practice. And spirituality is a process of practicing. Uh-oh. Got a big truck here. Spirituality is the process of practicing. You practice your meditation, you practice your devotions, you practice service, and you practice all these sorts of different things that show up for you in their own logical kind of way as you go along. And every time you put it into practice, because you know somewhere within you that there is an experience, that there is a memory, every practice that doesn't result in that memory is not a fulfilled practice, is not the true practice you're looking for. Right? So in the story of Buddha, eventually he just gave up, sat under a tree, and decided to meditate on what his whole goal was to find the root cause of suffering, right? That was his initial, what started him off on his journey. And he was like, well, I'm just going to sit here and meditate or I'm going to die. Because he'd done everything else. He'd been an ascetic. He'd been like freaking featherweight bones, ribs sticking out of his body and everything. And he just thought, right, I can't find it. I'm just going to do this or I'm going to die trying. And there was that kind of all or nothing mentality, right? In each relationship, in every situation in which you find yourself that you recognize as an opportunity to purify your mind, there's going to be this all or nothing mentality that you're going to climb towards, that you're going to reach towards, right? The ego is always going to talk to you and go, oh, you don't have to do this, you don't have to put yourself through these rigors or whatever. But your heart always speaks to you. Your heart always speaks to you and says, no, I need to go on a pilgrimage, I need to climb a mountain, I need to go and sit in this temple, or I need to go and sit by the river, or I need, and you feel it. You feel it calling you. You feel it, if you're listening, you feel your heart speak. You feel your heart's song, right? And I did. It's like I just felt like I had to do something, and I knew that I would be guided. I knew that I would be in the right place at the right time. And I didn't know how I knew. I just knew, right? Because I trusted in God. One little tiny action of faith is the same as the biggest action of faith, right? There is no order of difficulty in miracles. And if you can have a miracle in relationship to one tiny little aspect of something in your life, right? When Jesus says there's no order of difficulty, that then also can transfer to everything in your life, right? Salvation is not beyond immediate learning, but do you want to learn it immediately? Right? That's where it gets to. Now, I often tell people I don't recommend going through the dark night of the soul, only because I don't know where your faith is at. I don't know how much faith you have. I know when I went through the dark night of my soul, it was either I'm going to find God or I'm going to kill myself. And I had the knife, and I knew I was going to do it. I was going to slice my wrists. But I don't recommend that because it's only you that knows. It's only you that knows whether you've got it in you to go through that whole rite of passage. And it kind of is a rite of passage. There's only two ways. There's the dark night of the soul or the purification of the mind. And because this manual, because this teaching, the Course in Miracles, has been given to me and it's totally focused on the purification of the mind, that's what I represent. That's what but also I'm open to the fact that there are going to be those guys that go down the dark night of the soul, and I'm here to help with the purification of the mind after that if needed. It's like a top down or a bottom up approach. Jesus says most of you guys have a slowly evolving training program, but he also says salvation is not beyond immediate acceptance right here, right now. Right? But I don't know where anyone is at with that. Right? He's in charge of revelation, and I'm happy he's in charge and I'm not in charge. I'm just a foot soldier, you know. So that thing that you can feel within you, Max, that's a true thing. You can feel that experience, and the fact that you can identify it as that means that it's probably fairly close. I mean, I would just like, if you couldn't identify it, I mean, we'd be having a different kind of conversation.
Right.
Right. But the fact that you can identify it and recognize it, when I had the dark night of my soul, I only had the New Testament. Right? I only had the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, and I tore it out of the Bible and threw the rest of the Bible in the bin, which I know sounds like sacrilege, but that was the only thing that made sense to me, Sermon on the Mount. And I thought, if I can just love my enemies, and I didn't really have many, apart from on a worldly sense, greedy businessmen and all of that sort of stuff, and people that whatever. But I thought, if I can just love, and that didn't seem too hard, but I just couldn't bloody put it into practice. I just couldn't work out how to integrate that in, love my enemies and turn the other cheek and everything. Even though I'd simplified my whole decision to participate in some kind of spiritual activity, I'd narrowed it right down to the Sermon on the Mount. It was still out of reach because that piece of the puzzle still eluded me that made sense of it all. Right? And that was that inner emptiness. That inner emptiness is what calls you to God. Right? Now, in the Course, it says God put the call to awaken in you before you even began this journey. Right? And you feel it. If you're still in a moment of stillness, you'll feel this inner uneasiness. What is that? Why do I feel empty? Why do I have this existential kind of anxiety and this emptiness in my chest, and I feel like I don't belong, and everything I do just, and you kind of feel this existential futility. And ego mind gets very good at filling that up, right? I'll just smoke a joint, or I'll make myself a stiff drink and try not to feel it because it doesn't feel good. It feels like anxiety rising up, right? If you can see it rightly, it's the call to awaken. You're being drawn into the void. You're being drawn into that place where the world has no meaning, and in that moment, something else can happen. But you have to be prepared for that. You have to be, or generally you have to be prepared for that unless you have a dark night of the soul. But I know many people that have sat in very devoted actions of meditation and have recoiled from their meditation because they suddenly find themselves confronted with the nothingness, confronted with the emptiness or the no mind. Right? It seems to be an incredibly vast and dark space in your consciousness. Like if you look up into the sky at night, I think you guys can see it from the northern hemisphere, but we have this thing called Boots Void, which is a scientific anomaly where there are no stars in a whole section of sky. And it seems completely untenable. It's like, well, there are stars everywhere except for Boots Void, right? And it's aptly named. And nobody knows why, right? Now, in your mind, in your consciousness, you also have a kind of a Boots Void. You have this place where there is no thought, right? But the chitty chatty mind, the narrative of the ego, constantly distracts you from that place. One of the things Jesus says in the Course is, if you allow your mind to just go there, it knows the way, it will go there by itself, which takes away and alleviates you from the idea that there's something you have to do, Max. Right? It's like, all right, all I got to do is train my mind not to interfere with its own natural process, because the Christ in me is seeking its fulfillment, is seeking its home, is seeking its creator. Right? And that is my truth. But the ego doesn't want you to seek that truth, because when you do, it's the end of the ego. You will never put your faith in it again. But until then, you need mind training, because it's very seductive and it's very lucrative, and it holds out lots of shiny, dangly things and gives you lots of reasons why you have to have opinions about things and attachments and desires and wants. And even the want for God is a want, right? But it's not a want as in the same way in the world, because to want for something that you already actually have is more of an accepting of something rather than a want of something. Right? And that's how you need to see it. I need to accept that I'm whole and perfect already. And then the vibration of me accepting my perfection will match, it'll lock in with the vibration of God's knowing of me as whole and perfection. The two things join, bam, boom, shanka, and you have an experience. Right? But the mind fluctuates back and forth, yin and yang, yin and yang. And so that has to be dealt with first. Right? Your job is to return your mind to God as it was given to you. Pure, free, purified. Okay? Be like a child. Be innocent like a child, for of such as these is the kingdom of heaven. Right? Children don't judge. You look at very small children. They're just in the moment. They're just banging their heads one minute and screaming, and the next minute they're running around the playground about to do it again. They don't even stop to think why, you know. But like anything in the world, you learn through repetition, and eventually you learn that the hot plate's hot and you don't put your hand on the hot plate. But when you're ignorant of the things that hurt you, you don't know. Okay? And as a child of God, you're ignorant of the things that hurt you in this world, which are the meanings that you give to everything. So learning to live in the here and the now, learning to live in this moment, in the realization that, all right, I don't know the meaning of life. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm willing to learn of it. And it'll be presented through whatever the next thing is that shows up for me. I mean, everything's either a lesson or a blessing, right? If it shows up for me, it's a lesson. If there's a trigger in it for me, it's a lesson. I must be able to learn the lesson because God never gives me more than I can handle. What would be the point of that? God's not cruel. God's not boot camp sergeant, right? But in order to learn the lesson, I'm going to have to learn it with the Holy Spirit because that's what I'm telling myself the point of my lesson is, self-realization. And every time I learn the lesson with the Holy Spirit, every time I learn the lesson with my higher mind and defer what the lesson is presenting to me, what I think the lesson is presenting to me, defer my choices, options, whatever in that lesson, and just allow it to be miraculous, I will get the results of that miraculous thinking. Right? And that always occurs through prayer. The medium of miracles is prayer, right? Which I think is number 7 in the miracles principles, right in the front of the book. Right? The medium of miracles is prayer. And you talk to God like you just talk to me, like you talk to your father, like you talk to anybody. There's no set prayer. There's no set way to talk to God. There's no set anything. You open your heart. God knows what you want before you ask, because the highest thing that you could want is knowledge of Him. He knows it. You have a longing within you to know Him, and He has a longing in Him, let's say, to be reunited with you as an energetic attraction, not as a want like we want things in the world. It's a frequency. It's like God's tuned His radio frequency to 1, and you're tuning your radio frequency here in the world to everything except 1, to minus, into the minus ones and into the plus, and you're trying to find it. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Right? And every time you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, it's like you get a little bit closer. Every time you look at this relationship and that relationship, you're actually making an adjustment on your dial. You're bringing your frequency more into alignment with the Christ frequency, and things get a little bit easier to see. Sometimes some of those shifts, some of those movements are big, right? The one that Tina's looking at the moment, it's big. The ego will always convince you, oh, this is me going through this. No, it isn't. You are the Christ and you remain the Christ throughout. The thing that seems to be presenting the narrative is false. All you're actually doing is looking at a symbolic representation of an idea of separation and healing it through the miracle. That's all. I don't want the yin or the yang, because I know when I refuse to choose for either side, when I refuse to choose for any of these things, what the world offers me on this side or that side, the only alternative left is my truth. Because I don't know what else to choose for apart from that. I don't know what my truth is. I don't remember, but God has kept it safe for me. And once my mind is ready to receive it again, without me corrupting that receiving, it'll be restored to me. But never underestimate mind in denial. You can be 20 years, 30 years practicing forgiveness and still something can show up on your radar like a tiny little trigger, which could be just the tip of a massive iceberg. And some of the things that you've taken on, some of the packages of energy that you've taken on in your soul contract represented through relationships, some of them are going to be small and easily navigatable, and some of them are going to be seemingly enormous, right? But they're all met exactly the same way, with miracle mindedness, miracle mindedness, miracle mindedness. And we're here to support each other in that, right? But bear in mind, we're probably going to want to kill each other first, right? Because that also is part of our nature in the world, and you have to include the sense of the worldly self in, because otherwise, how are you going to know what you're atoning for, right? I mean, don't expect they're not going to want to throw rocks at you. Don't expect they're not going to want to call you crazy.
Yeah.
Don't expect they're not going to want to crucify you or shoot you or hang you up, you know. But Jesus says, I'm not calling for martyrs. I'm calling for crusaders. I'm calling for people that can hear this message now and be about representing it through their own actions. But we're, like my teacher used to say, we're late timers very early in time. If you've got A Course in Miracles, it's only 50 years since its inception into the world. I mean, we've had Christianity, let's say, as an idea, not as the religion, but as an idea of it, for 2,000 years. And look how much of a fuck up we've made of that. You know, it's like more division, more division, more division. Well, this religion, about this Christian religion, has it right, and that Christian religion, they have to be a reformist religion because they got a better idea of the secret meanings of the teachings of Jesus. You know, rather than simply realize, I don't know what this means, Jesus. You're telling me whoever understands the secret meanings of these things, just tell me. I'm never going to work it out with my own pointy brain. Just tell me what it is. And that's where you make your approach to the atonement through Jesus directly. Right? And there's nothing to stop you doing that. The only reason that you have all these workbook lessons and all these applications of things is so you can see the power of your own mind in its process of decision making and learn to believe in yourself again, learn to trust in yourself again in a whole new way that actually brings you something you want rather than bringing you more of the same kind of narrative in a different form. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
All right. And probably, you know, like, and I don't know, I'm just going to speak out of school here, but probably, Max, you know, you can feel that in you, and that's great, but there may be yet more steps, more smaller steps to take before you're actually ready to look at that, right? To actually ready to go down the depth of that rabbit hole. I don't know, right? Only you can know that. Only your own sense of connection with the Holy Spirit can give you any kind of true guidance on that. I know that you're
Okay.
entitled to, I know that you're entitled to miracles, and that you'll have as many miracles as you need until the point where you become revelation ready. But there's that threshold when you feel it, you know, you think you know it, and you get a sense of it and whatever, and then there's that threshold that you cross and it's happening. You know, it's like soldiers. They train for a war. They do all the training. They go through all the particular obstacle courses and firing ranges, and they do everything and everything. They talk about it, and they feel like they know it inside out, and they can feel it in their bones that they're a good soldier or whatever. But then all of a sudden, boom, you're on the battlefield. All of everything that you think about yourself prior to that suddenly doesn't count for a hill of beans, because the guys on the other side have exactly the same ideas of themselves as well. And it comes down to luck. You can be hit by a bullet in a ricochet, and you know, it's like, all my training for that, like, what the hell? You know. And it's the same with salvation. You don't know when that final plunge, that final deep dive into the confrontation with the void in you, or that empty place in you, and it's not really an empty place, but you don't know when that's going to occur. Right? Rosie, my wife at the time, she went into a deep meditation. She went to India and whatever, and came back from India and was practicing this other kind of meditation that somebody there had taught her. And she had a direct confrontation with the void and became terrified. She immediately stopped her meditation and she came to me and she said, everything went black in my thing. And I felt like I was being sucked into this emptiness, into this nothingness, and as if all of my consciousness, as if I was dissolving into being nothing. And I got excited thinking that she went through it. And she goes, no, I stopped meditating. And I'm like, what? That was like, that's a place that people try to reach, you know? But you have to be ready for it because it is terrifying. Right? Jesus says a tiny moment of terror, perhaps, but it's enormous. Right? It's like all of a sudden, you know, when you're a child and your mother pulls the plug out of the bathtub and you feel like if you don't get out in time, you're going to go down the plug hole. There's that sort of intrinsic fear of going down the plug hole. That's how it feels going into the void, but on a universal scale. Right? The whole universe disappears. Everything vanishes. But it happens so quickly. It's like if you look at the idea of a black hole, when you get to the threshold of a black hole, this is just science predicting what it would be like. I don't think we've ever sent anything into a black hole yet, but science predicts that at the approach to a black hole, you get to this kind of threshold, right, which I was talking about before, where the pull of gravity draws you in faster than the speed of light. So in essence, you would actually be on the other side of the black hole, able to watch yourself coming through it, right? You're traveling faster than the speed of light. So that light's not even reaching, you're actually going anti-light. You're going the other way. You're pulling away from the speed of light. All of a sudden, everything becomes a singularity. Right? That's what occurs in meditation when you go into the void. All of a sudden, there's this pull and you'll feel it, right? You know, you said, Max, I feel this sense of, right? That sense of is that pull, is that attraction to knowledge, is that attraction to the divine. Okay. And the more stuff you clear away with forgiveness, the more obvious that pull is going to feel, the more you'll get that sense of self. The more you practice leaps of faith, the more you'll feel that. Right. But there's a point where you can't reverse it. I think you can't reverse it. Like Rosie backed out of her meditation and stopped her meditation because she felt that she was being pulled into it. Right. That's the natural occurrence of the mind that is looking for God. You will feel like you're being pulled into it. Okay. Seen rightly, that's a good thing. But are you ready for it? You know, like, are you revelation ready? Because on the other side of the void is the truth. On the other side of that emptiness and that terror, and it happened so quickly. When it happened to me, I didn't even have time to say, what the, right? I knew it was happening. Like when Jesus says, in the twinkling of an eye, it was literally that quick. I wasn't even meditating. It just happened because it was time for it to happen. But I saw the whole world. I saw the people, the world, and everything, my whole body disappear. And it just went, whoop, and I was gone. Right? I couldn't have even gone, what the fuck's happening? Like there was no chance to even like try and stop it. It just happened. And boom, I was back in eternity. I was the I am, right? Christ's mind. Now operating through the avatar Dave. You know, which is bizarre. It's bizarre to me. It happened to me, but it's still bizarre to me. It's like I still can't like put two and two together. It's like, holy crap. The big picture is much bigger than I thought it was, much bigger than I remember it as. So whether you're ready or not, that would be something that you would take up in prayer. You know, Father, am I ready? And you'll be shown, you'll be guided, you'll absolutely you'll get the information that you need. Okay? And that's what I would advise. But I mean, the prayer of the heart that God put there himself, I recognized that prayer in the dark night of my soul because there is no way the prayer that came out of me was so universal, so inclusive of every living thing, every aspect of, like, I couldn't have come up with it. Right? In the Course, it talks about God put the prayer of the heart there himself, right? Just so you can't fuck it up. You can suffer for so long. You can walk astray and walk the world and go left, right, and whatever, down how many rabbit holes for so long. But eventually, suffering becomes insufferable. You know, there's a limit on suffering, and you just want to know. And each of these relationships, each of these yin yang situations you find yourself in being triggered by, becomes yet another opportunity in that coming closer to God, closer to God, closer to God. You know? So, like, Tina's at the moment's looking at a big one. Max, perhaps you're not looking at any. Anna's got a few things going on there that she likes to look at and whatever. And sometimes they seem to be small. They seem to come around small, but it's like any iceberg. How much is below the surface? How much is really there? And it might have to come around many times, and you look at the tip of the iceberg before you go, hang on, let me really look at this. I see that it keeps coming back. I feel this same energy in this same situation with different people, blah, blah, blah. I feel like I'm on the outside, or I feel like unloved, or I feel like whatever it is. It doesn't matter. I feel ostracized, or, I feel a victim, whatever. And eventually that tiny little niggly trigger, when you choose to look at it honestly and you be still and you like, all right, let me fucking deal with this, right? And you really got to get to that point. You realize, damn, this is big. This goes, right? You're healing that for your world. Forget about your relationship. Forget who you are that you think is healing it. That's included. But, like, look at the bigger picture. All right, I'm a soldier for Jesus. I'm a crusader in this. I'm doing this. I'm going through this so that those that come after me don't have to. Right? I'm doing this work so those that come behind me don't have to. So that I will be able to stand as representative of this healed in my mind and actually say to others how it was healed in me. It's always going to be miraculously, but how you came to that point of healing, right? Now, if I look at, I know Tina won't mind me using her example again, but if you look at the example of the idea of racism or political division or gender division or any of those things, right? And the world will always tempt you to want to have a leaning to one thing or another thing. And sometimes you'll have a leaning a bit one way and a bit the other way. And you'll be like, I don't really, I like some of these things that they say and I like some of those things they say. And you don't really have a firm point on it. But as soon as you dig in and give yourself a firm point on any of it, you take on the whole of it, right? You can't have a bit of an opinion about something without that something also being attached to the entire narrative, because you've picked up the tip of an iceberg. Okay. And that iceberg actually represents both sides. Right. So when Jesus says either be hot or, either be in or out, like lukewarm is nothing, you can't be essentially a bit this way and a bit that way. Eventually you have to realize that your orientation is the yin or the yang. And it's like, all right, as a healer, I'm going to deal with it where it seems to be the most powerful, right? And it's not that I'm actually for this aspect of something. I don't have any trouble with that, but it's actually that I'm against the other thing. That's what I'm projecting out. That's what I'm trying to get out of my mind. Jesus says you project what you don't want out into the world and give it a meaning and then judge it accordingly. And you get the results of your own thinking. That's how the illusion of separation perpetuates itself. Right? So here in this classroom, we're learning, I see how my mind's working. I see what I'm doing. There is no such thing as right and wrong. My job is to see the Christ in all of my brothers, unconditional love. Right? And you can either, like, if I were to use racism was one that was fairly prevalent for me up until about my early 30s. where I recognized it and healed it, even prior to the course. Right? But it was a very obvious trigger for me prior to that. And then in that moment of healing, it vanished. And I haven't had it since, like cancer. It vanished. I haven't had it since. And then there have been other things that I've healed using the principles of the course, which essentially was the same things: prayer and a willingness to confront my own fear. Right? So when it came time for me to confront racism, and there was this African fella or whatever nationality he was of coming down the hill towards me, I knew that if I was ever going to get beyond this irrational fear of different people, and it was generally the more much darker skinned people, because my original reference for it was from Papua New Guinea, where people are very dark skinned. I knew I had to stop him and ask him for a hug. I knew I had to confront my bullshit and go beyond it. And I cried for hours after that, which was the release of all that pent up emotional fear. I cried it out for hours and hours and hours. And it hasn't been part of my thing since. But it's the same with politics. It's the same with, and in our modern sort of the last decade or two, we've got this gender, what do you call it, ideology and stuff that goes on. And the world tempts you to pick a side. Are you for this whole narrative, or are you against this whole narrative? And it's like, well, I'm not for or against it. I am just my true self. I'm in the world, but not of it. Right? At one time, I would have said, well, I'm probably a bit this way about it and a bit that way about it, as long as I don't have to, represent it or whatever. Because there comes a point where you realize I'm not interested in politics. I do want to turn the television off. I don't give a damn. You don't know how to heal it. You don't know how to heal the reasons why you want to turn the television off, but you're just sick of looking at it.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care about the weatherman who tells me it's going to be sunny tomorrow and then it rains every damn day. I'm sick of that, because I see it's never anything that brings me any peace. It doesn't bring me any happiness. But simply turning the television off is transcendence, not transformation. It's still there, the same shit, when I turn the television back on again. And then I remember why I turned it off in the first. Oh, that's right, because it's the same old rerun of the same old thing, just being played out through a different narrative. But I see it's the same this side or that side, sunny day or rainy day. But it takes a lot to recognize that, because the narrative of the world always seems to have very, very good reasons for being justified why I should pick a side. It's like, no, I don't know. I'm not going to pick a side. I don't know what else to do instead of picking a side, because this stuff is all around me and whatever anyway. But Jesus is telling me to be in the world but not of it. So I'm just gonna have to walk with him. I'm just gonna hold his hand and not let go of his hand, which is what he told me on Mount Warning. Okay. Held out his hand to me from the sky. Take my hand and never let it go. Go where you want, do whatever you want. Just don't let go of my hand. You know? I like to think of it like, and sometimes you do. Sometimes you go off, you spear off into the narrative, especially if there's a strong emotional attachment there. One of my close friends is being badly treated, okay? Or something that I care about, some heritage building in town's about to be demolished, and I need to do something about it. Sometimes we have these sort of causes that come up and we feel a certain way, but those are all part of the divine relationship. It's not about the cause. It's not about how I feel. That's just an indicator that shows me, all right, I need to forgive this. I need to see this differently. But you can't see it differently from either one of the two perspectives from which you see it now. You have to be willing to let go of both of those so that the Holy Spirit can show you. Right? It's not yin. It's not yang. It's not either of those things that you're looking for. It's something else entirely. And when you're willing to let go of your preferences or your desires or your wants or your hopes or your dreams and all of those things that something might occur that will bring you happiness out there in the world, then the true happiness that you're actually looking for can be returned to you and restored to you.
Hmm.
You know, and you will feel it. You'll feel it. You'll feel it, feel it, feel it. It's like Chitra, the same thing. Chitra feels this calling, this longing. She understands, don't you, Chitra? You feel that whole thing, and yet there's this work. You're starting to realize now there's this healing work to do, and you're starting to realize why you're not having the experience that you're telling yourself you want. Right? And Jesus says in the Course, it's like, well, because you have blocks, and we're learning to seek for the blocks to the peace of God and heal them through forgiveness, heal them divinely through miracle mindedness. Those blocks are neither good nor bad. Right? It's like, aha, I see there's a blockage in my pipes. I just need to remove the blockage. But the emotionality, because blocks show up as relationships with things, the emotionality of things is going to be strong in some relationships and not so strong in others. And you're gonna want to use the old way of thinking to see to tell yourself, oh, this is bad. You know, this is not good. I have this block here. And it's like, it's not good or bad. It's just a block. Right? Try to get over the idea of telling yourself that because there's something that needs healing in you, that that's a bad thing. It's not. You didn't know what you were doing when you chose to come here. God's not judging you. I'm not judging you. I'm here to help you by representing what it is I've discovered about myself and telling you how that occurred, and to present you, you know, like there's the Course in Miracles. You also can do it. But there's this mind training where you have to untrain yourself, where you have to unlearn this good, bad narrative, guilty, not guilty kind of narrative first. You're not a miserable sinner. You're a child of God. You know that beautiful bhajan you wrote me? The first time you wrote it from the perspective, some of those chapters, some of those verses were written from the hopelessness and from the emptiness, right? I'm a foolish person, da 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 da. No, you're not. And Jesus is saying, all right, now you've got to let go of that narrative that you've been telling yourself for far too long. You're a child of God, and it's arrogant not to represent yourself as that, regardless of how new to this whole way of things you might be, because the truth of you is the truth of you. And it wouldn't be courteous of me to see you in any lesser light than a child of God. But I'm just gonna stay here seeing you as how I know you until you can come to know that yourself. Right? If I can use the principle of forgiveness to bring myself to this revelatory state, so can you. But it means we've got to be about it. We've got to extract a digit, and you know, the work must be done. I would love to be able to do it for you, but I can't. Right? You have to be the witness to your own transformation. So basically, and this, I'll just give you this one, when you represent yourself as the Christ or Krishna mind or whatever it is that you feel good to sort of have that with, when you do that, it's like, well, I'm a child of God. The world cannot tell me what I am. It always can only ever tell me that I'm a body, that I'm here doomed to die like everybody else. It can't tell me the truth of myself. So one, I'm going to stop looking in the world for what I am. I'm going to look for it where it actually is, right? The kingdom of heaven is within. Let me look for it where it is and find it there, right? But in order to look for it there, I've got to true up to the frequency of being able to find it there, which is my Christ frequency. I can't look for it with my split mind because I'm looking in two directions at once. I've got to have a singular focus, right? I've got to be one-minded, singular-minded. I am the Christ. I don't remember what that is, but I'm told that that's what I am. Now I'm going to begin to live from my spirit. I'm going to begin to live from my truth, which is all powerful, etc. And that is going to be a confrontation to my world. I'm not going to let the world tell me what I am. Right? And every time the world tries to tell me what I am, I'm going to make my declaration again. No, I am the Christ. Right? And it's going to bring up everything in me that wants to doubt my Christhood. And that's what the purification is. That's what the healing is. Does that make sense, Natasha? Right. I know you're having those moments of seeing that. Right? Claire, the same. I know you guys chit chat a lot. So I make a declaration. I am whole and perfect as God created me. The next thing that happens, somebody's in my face saying, "You're not perfect. Nobody here is perfect," denying my declaration. Right? You're not the son of God. You're just the carpenter's son. Right? That's where you have to be. Now, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. When I make a declaration, I'm whole and perfect, I am the Christ, and somebody wants to shoot me down, right? And it's going to be confronting. Right? Somebody wants to shoot me down. My temptation initially is going to be to want to defend myself. Right? I want to feel like I need to justify why I'm the Christ. It's like, no, I'm not going to defend myself because I'm defending myself against figures in my own dream. I'm defending myself against an illusion, which in that makes the illusion real to me. I'm giving it a value in order to defend against it. I'm validating it, right? An innocent man needs no defense at all. Understand that. You are innocent in the eyes of God. No matter what the world tells you, that is still the fact of the matter. Okay. So in my defenselessness, I can allow and I can see where it is that I want to defend myself, where I want to justify myself, because my ego always speaks first. And I can use that for prayer. Right. I have all this energy coming up. Somebody called me something. Somebody tried to deny my truth, whatever it is. And it's brought up all this energy, right? I'm going to use that energy for prayer rather than to defend myself or to retaliate out there in the world, right? Because that reflection of my denial, that reflection that wants to deny me my Christhood, is just part of my own storyline. It's a figure in my dream. If I'm still reacting to it, it's because I still believe it has reality over me, right? Why would you react at all to figures in a dream if you truly knew you were dreaming? Let them be as bitter and spiteful and hateful as they want. It's you that has given them all of those values, all of that meaning, right? When I refuse to defend myself against that, that meaning that I've given it will come up in me. The exact the exact frequency of that meaning will come up in me in my opposite of it, in my retaliation and my willing and my want to defend and attack back. Right? Attack and defense, attack and defense, attack and defense. That's the nature of ego mind. That's how it justifies its existence. I need safety zones. I need boundaries. I need all of this shit because I feel like I'm under constant attack. Right? It's crazy, right? But you don't see it until you see it. Jesus is telling me I'm in danger nowhere in the world. And it's like, I always think, well, that's easy for you to say, Jesus, you're not even here. But I need to see that for myself, right? And if you're someone, like who sees themselves as a minority or as being opposed by a bigger force like David and Goliath, you're going to feel that fear. You're going to feel that thing. But who won the battle of David and Goliath? Right? David. He had faith in God. This little guy with a little thing and a rock. Bang. Right? That's where it's at. That's where it's at. Not anywhere else. Faith. Right? So faith is miracle mindedness. You are loved more than you can know. You are protected more than you can know. You are blessed more than you can know. And you are needed in this whole venture of salvation more than you can know. You just have to let yourself know. You got to let that come to you. Stop trying to work it out with your head. You cannot. Those thoughts do not mean anything. Lesson 10. My thoughts about this situation, that relationship, these people, those people, this natural disaster, that bloody airplane crash, whatever it is, don't mean anything. Even though your ego is going to say, you should be concerned about those people on that airplane. You should be concerned. It's an illusion. No one dies. There is no death. The body is not what I am. But this virtual reality seems to be very real because I don't have anything else to compare it with. Real compared to what? That's why you have to have an experience. That's why you're learning to be revelation ready. Once you see the real world, once you have an awakening, and once you go beyond the world, you won't be concerned about people's situations or events at all ever again. And people will say, well, that's a very cold perspective. That's a very, don't you feel so empty not being concerned about the people on that airplane and their families and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, no, because that's what's always going to happen. That's what's meant to happen. Those people are meant to go on that airplane. They're meant to end up on Gilligan's Island. They're meant to whatever it is. That's the narrative of the world, right? That's what I chose when I came. I chose pain, suffering, and death. It's like, holy shit, I must be mad. Yes, thank you. I see that I bumped my head for a second, but I'm okay now. I'm back, right? But sometimes you rub the bump. It's like to see if the bump's gone down. It's like, don't rub the bump. Just don't rub it. Just leave it alone. Just let it do its thing, right? Let it be. Is that good? All right. I bumped my head. I fell asleep. I dreamed a horrible dream. They had to send Jesus into my dream to tell me that it's just a dream, that the world's not my home, and that I can follow him and I can wake up. Right? Jesus says, awaken, awaken, awaken. Awaken from what? It has to be a dream if he's telling me to wake up. My perception of the world is a false illusion, the dream within the dream. I wake up from that, and then I find myself in the forgiven world. And then I wake up even from that. God takes that last step, and I find reality, formless reality, where I am spirit, I am. And you will not want to come back here. I bumped my head and had a dumb idea. Hey, let's go to this thing called the world. I've been working on it, and we can all play parts for each other, and it'll be great. It'll be unlike anything you've ever known. And we'll just go for a couple of years and then we'll come back. Sorry, my fault. It was my dumb idea. It was my dumb idea. I talked you guys into it. And because you love me unconditionally, you agreed to play the parts. You're like, yeah, I'll play that part. And Jesus is like, well, that was dumb. I gave you a chemistry set and you didn't follow the instructions. You've blown yourself into another dimension. And now we've got to try and figure out how to get you back. Some of you guys still like it in this dimension. Yeah, but there's some good shit here, Jesus. I can have opinions about stuff, And Jesus be like all the time. It's like, it just ends in death again. You just end up coming back and doing it again and again and again. Don't you want to come home? It's like, yeah, but maybe next time if I meditate long enough, I'll have a better life. Says who? Whoever hell said that? Buddha never said that. And yet that's one of the basic tenets of Buddhism. You know, it's like, man, when am I going to stop listening to the thoughts in my head? When? I'm tired of my thoughts that tell me this and that and these and those and mine and yours and good and bad and right and wrong. I'm tired of that shit. I don't know. People ask me something, I don't know. They ask for my opinion, I don't know. I've got another opinion that you probably won't like. I've got a less popular opinion if you're still concerned about yin or yang. I've got this middle path. I've got this whole narrow gate thing going on. But you're going to have to leave behind the yin and the yang to learn about it. Is that okay, Chitra? Good.
Yes.
All right. Now, I want you to trust your name is written in the book of life. Your name is written in the book of life. You don't have to worry about anything. Anything. Okay? There is nothing to worry about. Jesus is in charge. You're not in charge. If you're in charge, we would all be very worried. Luckily, somebody who knows what's going on is in charge, right? And we're just learning to trust in that, trust in that, trust in that again and again and again until it becomes natural, until it becomes our way of thinking, our way of seeing. Oh, Jesus has got this. Jesus pays the bills. Jesus tells me where to go. The whole thing through the Holy Spirit. I don't need to worry. I can't change one hair from white to black. Not one. I can't remove all these stupid tattoos. Not one. I can't do anything. Right? But I can learn to let go and let God. I can learn to trust. Trust the universe. Right? Lesson 10. My thoughts don't mean anything. Thank God for that. I can stop using them. I can stop looking at them and thinking that they have some kind of meaning or value. I can just be the dunce. I'm the dunce of the class. I'm going to keep my dunce hat on. I'm not going to take it off. I'm going to refuse to take my freaking dunce because every time I take it off, I think I know something again. Every time I take that dunce hat off, I think I know something in a place where there's nothing to know. Like it's profoundly ridiculous, isn't it? Benjamin, are you hearing this?
Hearing everything. Thank you.
Very
This
good,
felt
brother.
like
Very good.
like a 2 hour video on YouTube. So just
Right.
listening. Yeah. And it's
Very good.
it's 2 a.m. At where I'm at, so I'm kind of like battling with being tired and sleepy at the same time. But yeah, it's getting through for sure. Thank
Good.
you. Yeah.
Good. Just let it in. Just let it in. It's like living waters. When you hear the truth, you know it. It doesn't mean you're not going to go out and fuck up again, but it's like you come back and you're like, I need some more of that water. I need some more of that water. You know? It's like teach a man how to fish. He's going to eat forever. If you just keep giving him fish, he's going to be dependent on you for fish all the time. I think that's how that goes, something like that. So, close enough. All right. Any questions? We've got a few guys here. Any questions? Dave, what's happening in Vietnam? I just wanted to, while we're at it. Who's on iPad? Someone there, iPad.
I'm on my phone today. I need to get the password to get into my iPad again. I didn't
All
know
right.
if it was. Yeah, I'm on my phone.
Okay.
Vietnam's good. There's a lot of construction. A third world country, and they're making a lot of money all of a sudden. Their tourism is good, and so they're reinvesting and so there's construction
Right.
all around. It's 24/7 right now, all around. But it's good. It's all good.
It is all good. I'm
waiting on my book.
in a truck
My,
stop.
the trans. Can you hear me? Are you having trouble hearing me?
Yeah, your sounds a bit kind of like sounds like you're in a factory or something.
Yeah. Okay. I'll have the iPad up and running for next week.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll get it working.
Right. Tina's going to get that translated for you with AI as soon as she's finished with the white edition. So just
Perfect.
sit tight.
Thank you.
Matthew.
Francine. Oh,
Matthew. Luke and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
For the blessings. Thank you. I was questioning, what is your comprehension of Dark Night of the Soul?
I can only give it to you from my own experience, Matthew. But it's like if you look at the Dark Night of the Soul as an idea of I just can't go on. I can't deal with my life anymore, and you go into this sudden crash, like a total crash, and in medical terms, you would say you're having a midlife crisis or whatever, and you would probably end up in hospital or on some kind of thing. But on spiritual terms, I look at it as a good thing. But you know, if you don't have faith, it's like I was saying before. When it happened to me, I didn't know it was going to happen. I was battling with this voice in my head, which was coming at fever pitch. I'd been practicing faith and going on little journeys and making adventures and just trying to force myself into awkward situations where I had to depend on God, right? And not putting God to the test, but testing my faith, like where am I at with it? And that had, unbeknownst to me, had sort of thrust me into this sort of front line of confrontation. I was walking up the street one day in Mawulambar. It was a sunny day, and I was walking back from wherever I'd been with no money, no whatever. And I stopped on the footpath, and I suddenly realized, it dawned on me that I was supported by a higher power. It actually dawned on me. It wasn't just a theory. It wasn't just a thing. It's like, holy shit. I can see that in my life. I can see that every time I go out with no money, no whatever, and just trust the universe, that I'm somehow supported, never in the way I think. And in the experiences playlist, you'll find there the one with the white Mercedes. That was the most obvious, where these couple pulled up in a white Merc to give me that was perfect. Give me a lift. But because I'd realized that I was supported by a higher power and yet still did not know what that higher power actually was, I found myself very quickly wanting to know, and at the same time not knowing how to know. And it was this kind of like I'm in a rock and between a rock and a hard place. I want to know what my creative source is, but I don't know how to go about knowing that. Right? And one night I'd given up. At the time I would have been an alcoholic, drug addict, whatever. But I was in and out of that, and I realised that wasn't helpful. And I'd been, I think, clean and sober for about 3 months off alcohol and 3 weeks off weed at the time of the dark night of my soul, somewhere along those lines, anyway. But one night, the thoughts in my head were at fever pitch. During that day, I was walking down the street and the voice in my head, look at that fat cow, she shouldn't be allowed to live. And all this narratives, like, just where is this stuff coming from? I hate these thoughts. They're in my head. How do I get them out of my head? I don't want them. And I'm telling myself, I don't want these thoughts. Or look at that person. They're this, that, and the other. And like judgment. It was massive, and it got to the point that night where I had no alternative but to kill myself to escape from this voice in my head. And even then, I didn't know if that was going to do it. Right? And I fell, I don't know what time it was, midnight for argument's sake, but I fell to my knees on the floor of my living room with a box cutter knife in one hand and prayer on the other hand. And I prayed. I just prayed and prayed and prayed. And it was so awful. It just got to fever pitch. And the prayer of the heart came out. I don't know how like I said before, I don't know how I said that prayer. It was a perfect prayer. Right? I wouldn't even know what a perfect prayer is, but I recognized that I didn't have an understanding to say that prayer. It just came from somewhere else. Right? It's like I released it rather than I thought about it or anything. And then I woke up the next day. I don't know what happened after I said that prayer. Right? I woke up the next day. I was in my bed at the other end of the house. The knife, never found it to this day. Couldn't find it anywhere. As soon as my eyes opened in bed, I heard a voice, a booming voice coming from the sky. If I looked at the cupboard, it was coming from the cupboard. The ground, it was coming from the ground. It was coming from everywhere, and even within my own mind. And it said to me, "Go to Byron Bay." You know, I got in my car. Like, I knew it was God. I knew it was a divine voice. But even then, it wasn't really registering like, holy shit. It was just like some phenomena. I still couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew I had to do what it said, and I couldn't not do what it said. So I got in my car. I drove around the other side of the mountain, picked up a couple of my friends who were spiritual, and I said, "Hey, I've heard this voice. I might be going crazy, but it's told me to go to Byron Bay." It was a big voice from the sky, right? It was everywhere. So they came, we went to Byron Bay, had a great day, nothing happened. Right? The second morning, go to Byron Bay, same voice, go to Byron Bay. It was huge, right? And I went around and picked them up again. Come on, we must have missed something, right? I'm stupid, right? I'm stupid. We must have missed something. Picked them up. We went and had another great day in Byron Bay. Nothing happened. The third morning, I heard the voice again, go to Byron Bay. And I thought, I'm just going to go by myself, right? So I went to Byron Bay. As I'm driving into Byron Bay, I heard the voice again, but this time it was more localized. It sounded like it was coming from the back of my utility truck. And I actually checked the mirror and turned around to see if there was somebody sitting in the boot, right? And there wasn't. And the voice was somewhat different, but I recognized it as Jesus, the same voice that I heard on Mount Warning about a year or so before. And it said, "Turn left here." And I turned left. I drove down that road. I'd never been down that road before. I didn't even know beautiful beach there. I didn't know that existed. And my car started to like shudder, like running out of petrol, and it had plenty of petrol. And I pulled over to the side of the road thinking, and it was a good car, Toyota, like reliable and everything. Pulled over thinking something's wrong with my car. Where I pulled over, I looked up through the windscreen. There's this massive sign, Miracle Center, right? And I sat there like gobsmacked. It's like Jesus like pulled one of the bloody spark plug leads off or something. That's what, I don't know how he made my car go like that. And I walked around to the front of the healing center, and little Susie, who I now know we're good friends, but she was sitting on a little stone wall out front with a coffee. It was about 8:30 in the morning. And I said to her, "This might sound crazy, but I've heard a voice and it sent me here, and here I am." And I said, "What is this place?" And she said, "That's not crazy for this place." She said, "Just go inside and listen." And I walked in, there was a kitchen in front of me, a little foyer, and then on the other side of that, a kitchen. To the right, there's like a library, dining tables and other things, and, eating area and whatever. And then to the left, a big meditation room. I knew it was a meditation room. I'd been in plenty of those over the last decade, right? And all the things around the walls, mind, power, forgiveness, prayer, all those stations. And at the far end of the room, it's like a 20 meter by 15-meter room, big pitch ceiling. At the far end of the room, there was a group of about 7 or 8 people. And they're all reading the 20-minute book, right? The reviews of the first 50 lessons of the Course in Miracles. I hadn't even had a copy of the course by then. I didn't even know about it. I didn't know it existed or anything. So I did what I was told. I went inside and I listened, and I could hear them reading what sounded like daily affirmations. Right? And I stood there listening, and they're reading "My thoughts don't mean anything," whatever, just the short form of the reviews. And they're laughing like crazy. They're laughing, crying and laughing, all this sort of stuff going on. And to me, what they were reading sounded like daily affirmations. And I thought, why is it so funny? I don't get what's so funny. I didn't know what was about to happen. And there was Bodie, who'd had a stroke and half his body wasn't working, and he's reading something and he's dribbling out one side of his mouth and laughing out the other side. And I'm like, these people are crazy. God sent me to a fucking nut house, which I kind of felt was appropriate because I was going through it. And then I realized, because I've been reading the Sermon on the Mount about don't judge, and I realized I was judging them. And I made a decision in my mind. I don't know what this is. Don't judge it. And then they all disappeared. Just in the blink of an eye, they vanished. There was no people. And I was looking at a blank white wall, right? Then the white wall disappeared and I could see all the flowers and houses and gardens outside from the neighboring surrounds. And then that vanished, my body vanished, and I found myself back in eternity, face to face with God. Right? Complete formlessness. I and he and me. And that's about all I can really give you as a description. But so that dark night of the soul, it wasn't really a one night thing. The dark night of the soul released the prayer. The prayer activated whatever that was, the voice and the guidance. And I guess you could say in that night, I surrendered totally. I surrendered to whatever it was totally. It was either going to be God or suicide. And I didn't want suicide. That was part of my prayer. I realized I didn't want to kill myself. I wanted to know what God was because I'd seen God working in my life. I'd seen the witness to God. I'd seen all these things going on through faith. And that experience in eternity, I mean, there's no time in eternity, but if I had to time it, it would have been like 5 seconds at the most. God spoke to me some stuff, and then I found myself back in the room, back in my body, at the other end of the room, laying face down on the carpet, and half an hour had gone by. Over half an hour, just over half an hour had gone by. And the room was full of people who were coming for the day's service. Right? There was about 50, 60 people in the room all of a sudden. And they were all standing around me holding hands. Most of them were all standing around me holding hands, waiting for me to come back into my body. They knew what was going on, right? And they were waiting for me to get up from the floor. And Greta, who this older Dutch woman, she was teaching for the day. When I finally got up, I was looking straight ahead at this little old lady, this 80 octogenarian, 80, 83 or something, I think she was. Little white hair, like a quintessential grandmother. And as soon as I looked at her, the love just flooded through my whole body. It came from the floor up and then it went down again. And like it was this wave, and it was enormous, unconditional love. And I looked at her and I realized this is how God loves us. Unconditional. I didn't even know who she was. It was unconditional. And I went over and gave her a big hug. And then the next person in the circle, same thing. The love just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All my brothers in Christ, And then Greta, who was teaching that day, she said to me, she said, you must be very powerful. She said, I've seen people trying 20 years for that experience and you just walk in off the street, And I don't know really what she meant by that. But she said to me, have you ever heard of A Course in Miracles? And I said to her something, my whole life has really been a miracle because I hadn't killed myself yet. That's where I felt with it. And I stayed there for 6 years with my teacher, Ted, and just studied. So, but that dark night of the soul, it was the whole thing. It wasn't just that devastating thing. It was the result of that as well, and the result of it is more important than the coming to it. Arriving at the destination is more important than how you get there. And that's why I always tell people, it's like, man, I don't recommend that at all, only because I don't know where your level of faith is at. If I was to say to you, just draw a circle and stay there, die or fly, I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if you've got that in you yet. I didn't know if I had that in me either. But that's what it came down to. Jesus says some will see it on point of death and rise again to teach it. Jesus went in the desert 40 days and 40 nights, and some of it, my teacher Ted used to say, some of us guys have a top down because, he was a drug addict, drug dealer as well for the mafia in New York, and he found himself in the gutter, and Jesus appeared to him, and said to him, hey, I want you to come and help me save the world. And Jesus said to him, are you crazy? You were perfect, and look what they did to you, right? And Jesus vanished. 17 years later, he's in a darker place, drug addicted and everything. Jesus appeared to him again and asked him the exact same question. He said, yeah, I'm ready. So I don't know what it is that brings anyone to that point of readiness, but it's like that's where we're all headed. We are all headed to that nexus point, to that threshold in our own consciousness. And I think the idea of transformation, like Jesus says, a slowly evolving training program, I think that's probably by far the gentler way, even though it does seem to have big bits now and again, big pieces now and again. It's far the gentler way, because I don't know if I, like, could I have reached that place? Would I have done it with the knife? I really don't know. I would not like to go through it again. No, it was dark night of the soul. It was the most awful. It was the worst. It was the worst it could possibly get, because it was that threshold between the world and God. There was nothing left, like literally nothing left. I didn't have a plan B. So, and I think that a lot of people tell me, oh, I'm in the dark night of the soul now. And I sort of think, well, if you can tell me about it, you're not in the dark night of the soul. I have people try to give me stories about how bad their life is. And it's like, I know the breakthrough threshold of what the worst is that you can experience. That place where it doesn't go beyond that point. And I know for a fact, because I've been to that point and gone beyond it, I died there that night, but I know that if I was telling you this story and I still had options left, that's not at that point. It's still not the dark night of the soul. And I don't want to kind of poo-poo on anything, but we're looking at things like truthfully here, and we're looking at things with the credibility of where we're at with stuff. And it's like, there's a point where God takes over. There's a point where the prayer of the heart kicks in. That point is the darkest point. It's at the bottom. It's at the total limit of suffering. And I hope none of you guys have to go to that total limit of suffering to experience that. And I just trust Jesus, like when he says, I'm in charge of the atonement, I'm in charge of revelation, I take him at his word on that. It's like, okay, I know that all my brothers are redeemed through your resurrection, through his resurrection. How that's meant to look, I don't know. I got no idea. But I'm just going to represent that it's done because I saw it done. And when I was in eternity, all of you guys were there with me. It was a singular experience. And I can't explain it. I can't describe it. I wish I could. But I can't. It's impossible to talk about truth. You can't, like Jesus says in the Course, you can't teach truth. It's beyond what can be taught. But I know that we are all one. We are all saved. Everything is redeemed. The world is just a dream. It is already actually over. And all we're here really doing is learning how to collapse time. It's like an editor with a book. An editor may go back and edit the book many times. So forgiveness is kind of like editing all the grievances out. I don't know where it goes from there, but I know that it's beautiful beyond words. It's love beyond description. It's home. It's where we are, dreaming that we're here, but where we actually really want to be. And the only way I can try to represent it is with words and my actions and whatever, and my commitment to it. And I know that is such a reduction. It's such a reduction. But we have each other, and when we join with each other in it, it becomes reality. It becomes something that we can depend upon. Like I always encourage you, like every teacher, every good spiritual teacher will encourage their students to make bold experiments with their faith. Go out, leave your comfort zones, leave what you know familiar, leave everything. Go out and let the world push you around so that you can become Christ-minded, so that you can learn to become dependent on God. Let these things happen, because the natural predisposition of the ego is its own comfort. I've got my little house. I've got my little thing. This is me. This is how I define myself. It's like, no, 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 no. Stop defining yourself. You know, I've got my group of friends. I've got my narrative. I've got everything in place. And as long as it doesn't change, I'll be happy. But it's always going to change. It's always going to change. The world is always going to throw a spanner in the works. As soon as you get happy about one thing, bam. Okay? And that depends on your cycles. It depends on your cycles. You may be happy in a happy marriage, let's say, for 50, 60 years, for several lifetimes. And then you may have other little things that come around every 5 minutes. You know, the neighbor next door playing their music too loud every night, or somebody across the street, their stupid cat shit in my front yard every day. Something that triggers you. It doesn't have to be like a major thing. But remember, everything's the tip of an iceberg. And we're learning to use our triggers, not react to them. I think my coffee's cold.
I have a
Hey,
question.
Dave. Oh,
It's not, oh, sorry, Tina. You go
Oh,
can I
ahead.
just say this real quick? Real quick.
yeah.
Dave,
Yeah.
isn't there a part, I don't know if it's relevant anymore, in your story where you made a
Oh,
bargain with God?
oh,
I
that
mean,
was earlier on. Yeah, earlier on, I made many
that was
bargains.
another prayer that
Yeah,
about
many prayers. So
about if I
in
could
the
only
in,
have I
I
can't
can't
do
even.
this, but
Yeah,
I'm
I'll give up
sorry.
drinking if like.
No, 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 no. It was really specific. It was like, I can't do this, but if there was a course, there was
Oh yeah,
I
that
can't.
was in the prayer. That was in the prayer.
That's
That's
what I was gonna
crazy.
say.
Right?
That's
I
perfect. That's
didn't
a
even know the
perfect.
course existed. I remember, yeah, in that prayer of the heart that came out, right?
Yes.
I knew I had to give my life to God. I knew it, right? I just somehow knew it. And I remember I remember saying, because I'd looked into going to seminary college or whatever, and it was 6 years, right, for this course to be I can't even remember what it was now, a lay preacher or something. 6 years, and I remember saying to Jesus in that prayer, I don't think I could do 6 years, Lord. Maybe I can do one. If there was a 1 year course, I could probably do that, but I couldn't see myself at the time sitting for 6 years, right? And the funny thing is, the course goes for 1 year, but I sat with my teacher for six. It's kind of like damned if you do and damned if you don't, or blessed if you do and blessed if you don't, whatever. So it was a funny thing. So yeah. Gay, you had a question?
Well, okay. So I'm going to ask you a direct question.
Ooh,
Um, so do you get triggered? Um,
of course
'Cause
I do.
because I keep finding, I had that experience years ago. Then I was introduced to the course. And then when I was willing to die, which was a few weeks, a month or two ago, a couple months ago, I saw eternity again. Um, and so for myself, I I don't worry what's happening. I have lost so many jobs, and every time, tapped it, and Tina, I understand where you're coming from. Christ always provided because I always knew everything was perfect. But I get triggered because, and I keep praying for this healing, and I don't know if it's mine to give, is I get triggered because I worry about my children's world. And even though I know my world is going to, I'm fine. I don't care what happens in this world because I'm not
Right.
up.
So just stop there for a second.
Mhm.
Right. The fact that you get triggered means there's still more work to do. Right. And you can see that.
Well, I've been praying.
Right.
So,
Okay. Now you're separating your world out from your children's world.
yeah, you're exactly right. And
Right.
that's what Christ
You're
told
still
me.
looking. You're still looking at your children as separate from you. You don't have any children. You're not
Yeah,
a
you're right.
gay. You're not gay Rogers,
Right.
right? You're closer to Buck Rogers than gay Rogers, right? You're in a whole nother century. You're in a
Right.
whole other kind of
I know.
life form,
I know where I am. I mean, I know where I am. I
right?
saw it. It's just, um, you
Right.
know,
So stay there. Ready?
yeah.
Stop. Now stay there where you know that you are. Right. See how that works?
Yeah. And yes,
Stop telling the story. Stop telling the narrative of I know where I am, but
yeah,
let
no.
the fact let the fact that you know where you are be the end of the story. I know where I am, right? Everything else will be organized miraculously. Everything else in your consciousness will take care of itself at that point. You're saying, I've had an experience, I know the truth. Seek the truth and it will set you free. Not you will set you free. Because the
Right.
you that's trying to still navigate the story is the false sense of you, the false I, the little I, right? The little I is included in your transformative process as the avatar that is only representing the truth of you, not the story of you. And until you are willing to represent only the truth of you, then the triggers will remain
I
because
find that,
they're there for your healing. No, 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 you don't find anything. You
yeah,
ready?
I understand.
Now,
Okay.
where are you, Gay? Where are
I'm
you?
in truth. I am in truth.
Now,
And
stay
what
there. Stay there. No, stay there. I'm in truth.
Woo, woo. Yes.
Right. Stay there. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yes, wow, and thank you.
Right.
Let anything else you want to say other than that, let it go.
Okay. Okay.
I am in truth. Okay. You've already had an experience of your divinity. Now you're learning to ground it. Most of these guys are still doing the groundwork in order to have the experience, right? If you've already had an experience like me, and now you've got to do the purification work, you've got to be about that work,
Oh, mhm.
right? The work is releasing the defense against the integration of the experience that you had, right? Stay there. Good. There you go. Anyone else have a question? iPhone 91. I reckon in the UK, very late in the morning, late in the night.
Hi, Dave.
What's happening, Roa?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. Yes, I'm smiling and I
Oh,
can
good.
relate it because I had buffer experience when I've been taken actually like kind of to the source. I
Good.
could say like I jumped like if you would jump into the swimming pool and you're surrounded with water, I could
Right.
feel like being surrounded with love,
Right.
unconditional love.
Cool. It changes everything, doesn't it?
Yes.
And you can't go back. That's good. All right. Let's read lesson 21, Tina. If you would read that lesson. Then we're going to do a little bit of breathing, a little bit of prayerful meditation. Don't worry about
Oh,
reading the don't worry about reading the application. Just read the body of the lesson.
okay. Oh,
You're right there. Need some bigger headphones. Go over your
I
thing.
do. I do. Okay. Oh. Okay. I am determined to see things differently. Oh, no. The idea for today is obviously a continuation and extension of the preceding one. This time, however, specific mind searching periods are necessary in addition to applying the idea to particular situations as they arise. Five practice periods are urged, allowing a full minute for each. In the practice periods, begin by repeating the idea to yourself and close your eyes and search your mind carefully for situations, past, present, or anticipated, which arouse anger in you. The anger may take the form of any reaction, ranging from mild irritation to rage. The degree of the emotion you experience does not matter. You will become increasingly aware that a slight twinge of annoyance ooh, is nothing but a veil drawn over intense fury. Try, therefore, not to let the little thoughts of anger escape you in the practice periods. Remember that you do not really recognize what arouses anger in you, and nothing that you believe in this connection means anything.
Good.
You will probably be tempted to dwell more on some situations than on others on the fallacious grounds that they are more obvious. Oh, shit. This is not so. It is merely an example of the belief that some forms of attack are more justified than others. As you search your mind for all the forms in which attack thoughts present themselves, hold each one in mind and tell yourself, I am determined I am determined to see this differently. Try to be as specific as possible.
Good.
You may, for
That'll do.
example,
That'll do. That's going to be your go-to lesson for a little while. Right? Try to resist the temptation to get upset about it, and try to remember what the focus of this Zoom meeting is about today, in that what you are looking at now is what you put your hand up for to heal for everybody. It's your chunk. You're doing this for your world, and you're doing it because you're capable of doing it. You have the strength to do it. Right? When Jesus says in the Course, I need those who can speak the language of those who suffer. I need those who can speak the language of those who count the hours and the minutes of the days. Right? Because you understand what they're going through. But you got to free yourself from it first. And then you can represent it without any kind of falsity in you. And it's going to be ugly. It's going to be really ugly. But I don't want you to give ugly a value. Right? I want you to look at it and go, all right, I'm going to accept that it's going to be ugly. I'm going to accept that it's not going to be fun. Okay? But the fun part is on the other side. This has been coming around for a while, and it's been brewing for a while. You know it. I know it. And I know you are ready. And you got all of these brothers in this Zoom who reach out to you and communicate with you all the time, who are going to lend you their love and support. And I know you're going to want to reject every last one of us. Because that's how this goes down. You're going to be looking upon the wish to kill. You're going to be looking upon the wish to destroy. Just remember, God gives his biggest challenges to his strongest soldiers. Tupac. I believe in you, and everyone here believes in you. Right? Some of these guys have no clue what you're looking at or where you're going, what you're going through, and whatever. As an emotion, as a depth. Right? I do. A few of these guys do. Claire, you good? You belong in the atonement. Trust me.
Thank you. Yeah,
Right?
so helpful today. Thank you.
Right. That voice in your head that tells you you don't belong, that you don't fit in, right? It's the same thing Tina's going through in a slightly different way. You're at the beginning of seeing it. She's kind of like towards the end of seeing it. She's so pissed off with it now, she's going to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Right? Eventually, if you look at Tina right now, eventually you're going to look like that. welcome to awakening, right?
Yeah. I know it's messy. Ugly.
It's messy. It's messy. You dribble out of orifices, and snot runs out, and like you know, you
Yeah.
muck up your words. It's ugly. I wish it was like in the Matrix, red pill or the blue pill, and you could just, you know, take the red pill and it's done. There's a little
Yeah.
moment of, did you see that? And then it's done. But the process is pretty ugly, right? On this side of the healing, coming to that confrontation point where you realize I'm not going to take any more of my own bullshit,
Mm.
and you apply the principle on this side of that, it's awful. But it gets easier. The more you do, the more, and you become, all right, I got to face fear again. I got to look at my fears again. I did it last time. I can do it again. It seems to be a bigger thing, but there's no order of difficulty in miracles. I'm going to do it with a miracle mind. I'm just going to trust that Jesus is with me as I go through this particular valley of the shadow of death. And I know that I'm going to come out the other side.
Mm.
It always looks the same way until you get to this kind of tipping point where you realize you're doing it to yourself and you start to laugh at yourself about it. Right? But there is a definite tipping point. When Jesus said to Helen, you've been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Eventually that balance comes up. And it's like my relationship with my the equilibrium of my universal relationship is no longer so far out of whack that it seems like an enormous leap of faith to try and rectify things. It doesn't seem so disastrous. It's like, all right, I'm just going to pray again. I'll just go and pray, and I'll make sure I mean my damn prayer. I won't be just lip service, and I'll get down into that prayer and I'll stay there till I feel good about it. And then I'll just leave the rest up to God. Something always happens. I don't know if Nash is still here, but something always happens. Prayer always works, but you got to mean it. You do belong. You do fit in. Not in the world, but you belong. You belong in a group of brothers who are going to support you in whatever the hell you're going through, and as much as we can. I think in some regards it was, I mean, the internet's pretty cool, but I think in some regards it was much nicer to have, much more organic to have a healing center where people were actually there in the flesh and you could go and get a hug and, have a cup of tea and sit down and just talk and just go through particulars of stuff. But, this must also be perfect too. So the thing that I find that people don't often do and don't, and perhaps even have resistance to doing, is asking for help. We're
I'm
so
shit at
resistant.
that.
Right, exactly. Because you don't want to receive, right?
No.
I have this resistance to receive. I like the idea of giving, but then receiving, this sense of unworthiness and this whole sense of it's like, no, you're a
Yeah.
child of God. You're entitled to miracles. You are entitled to receive the grace of God no matter what.
Mm. Mm.
But don't waste those moments where you don't feel like that. It's like I said to Gay, recognize the story and make the declaration of your truth. All right. And I may not know what my truth is, but I can choose to be miracle minded instead.
Mm.
If you've already seen the truth, stay true to it. Right. It's the truth that sets you free, not your understanding of how the work gets done. Right. The light does the work, not me, not
Yeah.
Dave, not Tina, not anybody. The light does the work. All I've got to do is give a little bit of space, leave a little gap, right? Open my heart and let something else happen that is not of my own making.
Mm.
Right? That's important.
Yeah.
All right, I love you guys. I'm going to hit the road. I'm taking up a big space in this truck stop here. But any other questions? Anything going on? Anyone really need to ask for help? You got the workbook, you got the lessons, you got the prayer of the heart there, you got everything you already need. I'm just reminding you what you already know. That's it. George, you good? I like your celestial background. disappear into it, and we'd be like, yes.
I did. I don't have any question. Um, it's difficult to absorb sometimes what I read from the book, because
Right.
it's not for the mind, I guess. Um,
It is and it isn't.
it is not.
Right. It is and it isn't.
Oh, that's why I have difficulty, probably.
Right.
Um, um, I guess it's difficult to apply what I read.
Have you started the workbook lessons yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. What lesson are you up to?
I'm on page 237, I think.
What's your lesson today?
Um, don't remember.
Right. Okay, stop. See how you don't remember? That's why it's difficult to apply.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want you, Tina will stay behind with you if you like after this a little bit and teach you how to really connect with the material. When I ask you what lesson you're on today, you should remember, right?
Okay.
Because this course is your salvation. This course is part of the universal curriculum that embodies your particular participation in salvation of George. Okay. The fact that you don't remember means you're not giving it the value that it needs in order to be able to, for you to apply it, etc. Okay. That's not good nor bad nor anything. Everybody is the same way. We come from this kind of superficial perception of ourselves, and it tends to get overlaid onto our spiritual efforts. But we have to kind of activate ourselves, and Tina will take you through that. We have to kind of activate ourselves and really recognize, one, who it is that's talking to us through the course, right? And let that really, man, let that really stick you in the heart, right? If some guy turned up at your door wearing a robe and sandals and turned the water into wine in your house, you wouldn't know what to do with that, right? You would be like, holy shit, am I dreaming? What is happening here, right? How do I make sense of this compared to the rest of my world, right? But literally, that guy that wears the robe and the sandals is the same one that wrote this book. Try to get a sense of that. This is the Christ return. This is it. It is this thought system. It is this discipline. It is this teaching. That's where you have to read it from. Holy dooly. And I know that you may or may not believe it, right? But that doesn't make it not true nonetheless. I mean, I've met the author. It's kind of, I don't even have the luxury of doubting whether I believe it or not. You know, it's like I was talking to Matthew before, that story of how the voice from the sky, that's a freaking biblical thing that happened to me. Biblical, like Cecil B. DeMille, Moses, a voice from the burning bush. And I know everyone will have their own story, their own biblical kind of thing, but mine was really biblical proportions. I don't have the luxury to say that didn't happen. And everything that happened after. You know? Gone out of the world and seen that there was no world. It's like it was this big, big whiplash, bang, bang, bang of these realizations happening again and again and again. And and there was this process of acceptance. I had to accept that Jesus was the author of the course. I didn't have to, but it made it a lot easier for me to actually get beyond where I was struggling. It's like, holy shit, this is the Savior, this is the Messiah, written me these words, and I'm reading them every day as if I'm just reading somebody's recipe or reading a fictional book. I don't even remember my lessons. The first year I did those lessons, I got to like you. I got to lesson 260 something, right? I can't remember the exact lesson. I got to one of those lessons in about the 260s, and something in the lesson made me realize how half-hearted I'd been so far with all of those lessons. How something in that lesson made me realize that I was just giving lip service to the lessons and wasn't really letting them affect me, right? And so the next year I made a decision to stop, and I made a decision to start again the next year, January the 1st, with lesson 1 and do it again. And I wrote on my arm here with a big marker pen that didn't rub off, I wrote the heading for the lesson every day. I wrote it on my fridge on a yellow Post-it pad. I wrote it everywhere. I made sure I wouldn't forget. I did whatever I needed to do to remember to do my lesson and remember what my lesson was for the day. And the second year that I did all that and put more effort into the lesson, like really studied it and really digested it, gave it full value, I got a much different result. Right? I went to bed one night on lesson 12, and I woke up the next morning and my mind was completely empty. I was completely different. There was no thoughts in my head. Lesson 13 was like, boom. And I was kind of scared. For the first time in my life, I had a perfectly peaceful mind. And it was empty and peaceful for about 3 days, 2 or 3 days. And then the narrative started to creep back in again, and that internal chatter started to happen again. But it showed me what was possible. Right? It showed me that when I give those lessons full value, I can get back a result, or they give me a result that shows me something relative to my own level of participation within the atonement that makes sense to me. Right? And it made sense to me because the goal of the course is inner peace. And of course, I want to know what that is straight away on as early as I can. So lesson 12, boom, Jesus gave me an experience of perfect inner peace. And I knew that that then was what I was working towards with all the rest of the lessons. And now, when I'm not talking, my mind is the same. It's perfectly peaceful. I mean, I have stuff pops into my mind like, don't forget you've got to go shopping. You know? Don't forget to put some clothes on before you walk out the front door. Things like that. But I don't have that yada, 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 yada that goes on all the time. The goal of the course is inner peace. Inner peace through miracle mindedness leads to revelation readiness. And it's the revelation that you want, but you got to do the work first. You got to clear away enough of the debris, enough of the nonsense, enough of all that stuff, right? This is salvation. It's not about making the world a better place. It's about getting you out of the world, awakening you from this dream of form. All form is illusory. Right? And it's going to take you a minute, like hang around with Tina and some of these other guys. It's going to take you a minute to kind of like integrate these concepts to the point where you can see how they apply in your own particular life. Right? I can tell you how they apply in my life, but that does no good because your level of learning or your awareness is based on different structures of thought association than mine, even though it's within the same framework, time and space. If I say to you, there's a guy that works at he owns a fire engine. He lives down the road from me. And you'll say, oh, there's a guy that owns a fire engine, lives down the road from me too. You're going to be picturing one kind of fire engine, and I'm going to be picturing another kind of fire engine. Right? So we're talking similar things, but not exactly the same. Right? You're going to find this in your application, in your way, and it's going to make sense to you as you go along. But first, you've got to connect with the material. Right? And that's always That's always a beginner's kind of thing. You just start reading it and you don't realize you can read a whole page and you get to the end of the page and you don't even know what you've read. You know, I know you can relate to that. So
Yeah, I do.
yeah.
Thank you.
So welcome. You too will look like Tina before too long. All right, I love you guys. That's it. I'll see you next week. I what was it? Gay, Tina's going to talk to you about those videos. That's all good. I don't know that I'm going to get a time to do the preliminary one, so just if you want to just go ahead, she'll go through that with you a bit. But otherwise, everything's all good.
Gucci. Gone. Kevin. George, you gonna hang out for a second? I know it is late.